who's representing those with disabilities, and he's already speaking, and we shall be getting into Parliament later on in our conversation and just seeing what the business of the day is like now that has resumed following the inauguration of the President and his deputy yesterday for the second term, like we said. And now, speaking of which, President Uhuru Kenyatta's second term will have him facing economic challenges that, if not addressed, could see the country further lose track of the path towards attaining Vision 2030. Now, Kenya's economy is expected to grow by 5.1% this year, down from the projected 5.9%, at least according to the government. Now, here's Alex Mwangi with a look at some of the key economic hurdles that the fourth president of the Republic of Kenya needs to tackle to propel the country to robust growth.
Job creation remains the biggest headache for President Uhuru Kenyatta given the country's youthful population. The Jubilee government aims to create 1.3 million jobs every year. Last year, the economy generated 832,900 new jobs. Of these, 747,300, or 90% of them, were in the informal sector. Whereas the informal sector employs the bulk of Kenyans, the quality of majority of the jobs is not the kind that contributes significantly to economic growth. Indeed, many informal jobs sieve through the tax net. President Kenyatta therefore needs to find a way of growing formal jobs to boost economic growth. The growth in GDP this year has been revised downwards to 5.1% from 5.9%, taking Kenya further away from the trajectory required to attain Vision 2030.
Quarter one, we grew at 4.7%, and quarter two, 5%. That gives us sort of an average of only first half of this year of about 4.9 thereabout.
The GDP growth can only go up to 6.7 by the year 2020.
The manufacturing sector, a sector which is often cited as holding the key to providing stable jobs, is one of those that President Kenyatta hopes to improve.
Over my term, it is my intention to grow and sustain this manufacturing sector and raise its share of the national cake from the current 9% to 15%.
President Kenyatta has announced the reduction of power tariffs by 50% for manufacturers from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. beginning the 1st of December. The government faces a challenge in raising the level of exports, a barrier which, if overcome, will greatly improve the competitiveness of Kenya's economy.
At East African region, our goods are almost similar, primary products. Diversifying to medium technology products is the only way that Kenya will remain ahead of the curve.
Our exports to Uganda are declining, their exports to Kenya are increasing. I guess that's a natural consequence, first of all, of regional integration because trade has to flow within the EAC. We've also looked at the numbers and we do notice that there's a lot of Chinese and Indian products that have replaced Kenyan products in that market. These ones are mainly due to cost competitiveness.
The tourism industry has been on the recovery path this year. The extended electioneering season, however, has dampened the growth.
You know, the international tourist really doesn't care whether Kenya holds 10 elections in a year, as long as we conduct ourselves in a peaceful manner.
Cases of terrorist attacks in parts of the coast and northeastern regions contribute to negative publicity for a country whose tourism potential is far from being fully tapped. In financial services, the elephant in the room has been the interest rate caps which came into effect late last year. Such has been the impact of the interest rate cap that year on year, growth in credit to the private sector is almost flat.
2% is still lethargic. I mean, this is, let's be clear, 2%, all we are saying is we've reached rock bottom. I mean, we are not quite excited about 2%.
A review of the interest rate cap as soon as possible is a move that will serve the country well, given that small and medium enterprises which provide the bulk of employment opportunities have been hit hard by the regulation. Corruption, despite a concerted effort to eliminate the vice during his first term, still continues to ravage the central government as well as county governments. Prosecutions that will help fight the vice are often blunted by the glacial pace of Kenya's judicial system.
Thirdly, through Parliament, we shall enact legislation to strengthen fiscal discipline and accountability at both the national and county levels. Every shilling of Kenya's taxpayer money must be fully accounted.
Reforms in healthcare have made Kenya significantly improve its provision of maternity care. And in education, key changes have helped provide better administration of national exams.
But Jackson is only one of 6.8 million beneficiaries of NHIF cover. Within 5 years, my administration will ensure that 13 million Kenyans and their dependents are beneficiaries of this scheme.
For the president to succeed in his second term, however, he will need to turn his words into actions and also focus on rebuilding a nation currently experiencing massive political divisions. Alex Mwangi, NTV.
The president's economic agenda, and we had seen over the last few weeks, the PSU, that's the Presidential Strategic Communication Unit, had been sending out a lot of footage and images of the president having met his economic team, which again brought up conversations about the gender balance in there. However, that's a different story for a different time. However, the president had been seeming very keen, on his economic plan, and the message that seemed to have been pushed, because what was being given to us was not specific details of what was being discussed, but just the fact that the president had actually been meeting with the economic team about 3 times within 3 days, and we saw that we saw at least he made some pronouncements yesterday, which is likely to be what they had been discussing. But now we get into the conversation about what exactly some of these things mean when the president makes such announcements, and what beyond his announcements, what the business scene looks like and what the hopes are. And I'm now joined in studio by, I'll begin from my immediate left, Churchill Ogutu, the senior analyst at Genghis Capital. Thanks for joining us. We have Alex Maina, who's the creative director of Ideas Unplugged. He's an entrepreneur. So these are the guys I was talking about who sweat it out, the guys who are actually digging and telling us what his experience has been. We shall be having another entrepreneur joining us later on in the show. And we have Tony Watima, an economist who also consults with the IEA. Thank you for joining us. And maybe we begin with you, Tony. This is a good welcome note for you. When we talk, what do you feel needs to be done first and foremost to ensure that the president has given some good pronouncements saying, for instance, manufacturers, those to try and push the 24-hour economy? What needs to be done? Is it a practical thing, first and foremost?
Yeah, thank you for having me today. I think it's a practical thing because when we look at the numbers of infrastructure for the last 20 years, has been constant around 10 to 12% to the GDP. So we need to find other innovative ways on how we can boost the infrastructure in the manufacturing sector. So the president's direction that there is a tariff during the night, I think it's a good move that we'll, as economists, will want to see how it plays out. Because I'm sure such incentive, how it works is there are companies that will be forced to move towards that time so that they can enjoy that incentive. So we will look at what exactly is the numbers of manufacturers who can operate. So it means we'll be operating around 18 hours. Okay. So do they have the capacity? Do they have the resources? Do they have the human resources to operate through that time? So I think it's a good move because in manufacturing sector hasn't been having so much investments despite the few ones that we've known that haven't worked for these years.
All right. Yeah. Well, maybe just come to you, Churchill. What are your initial thoughts on some of this pronouncement of the president?
Yeah, I think it's a step in the right direction. Currently, if you look at what's the major backbone of the economic growth, is highly on the agricultural side. Agricultural, as you well know, is prone to the weather-related shocks, as you saw in the fourth quarter of last year and also the first quarter of this year. So at least to diversifying the economy, bringing on board the manufacturing is a step in the right direction. As you're looking at it, as what Tony has said, it's the last 2012 to 2016 period. I mean, manufacturing has accounted to close to 12% of the annual economy. So we're looking at these moves by the power tariffs, which, I mean, power is one of the major costs in the manufacturing industries. So at least this tariff that has been pronounced yesterday, it will be able to not only elevate the to a 24-hour economy, but also boost the manufacturing segment. Another key issue, as you're looking at the whole broader economic growth, is the issue about unemployment. As of the economic survey for last year, we'll looking at 16 million people who are employed both in formal and the formal sector. Removing, say, approximately 10 million in the schools, so you're talking about north of 40% unemployment rate. So as a diversification measure getting into the manufacturing sector, at least it will be able to boost also the employment numbers, talking at which also fits in within the Jubilee Manifesto. They spoke of 1.3 million jobs per year, so it will be something which will also be able to boost the employment in the country.
Okay, and now just speak of employment, and we have those who've chosen to go, into their own thing. We have found, we're having a conversation about this last week. We had an extensive one in terms of jobs and employment. And I want to bring in Alex. Alex, you're not employed, you're a self-employed person. Yeah. And maybe just to give us an idea of how it has been, because we can have the nice big talk from the analysts and the economists, and who can give us but for you, how has business been for you? Maybe you can begin by just telling us the business you're in. I know it's it's in the creative arts and the photography and the likes, but how has it been, especially has it been affected by the electioneering period, and what then do you expect?
Okay, well, I'm in the photography and documentary making business, filmmaking business, and it is expected usually during an election year that there's a bit of go slow. The reality indeed has. We do prepare for that. We expect it, but this year has been unique because of I think, there was no expectation for the
longer period
that it got into, and I think that last part, the last about 2 months or so, have been when things have really taken a bit of a toll, and that is because there's been a bit of a go slow, both by our clients and our customers, and psychologically there has been a feeling of not too sure what's going to happen. So really, even among staff, you find that people are neither here nor there. It's not been very clear time, as in for us as business people. And then over and above that, just from my observations, we're used to Nairobi, we're working within the city, having traffic and having, multitudes. And, it's been a bit different, especially if your business is located in a place where you rely on walk-ins. It's been a bit of a challenge for us.
Okay, because you find less people coming in?
Yes, when we are relying on walk-ins, for example, people coming into the studio for just passports and stuff like that, and perhaps pronouncements are made and announcements, you just find that there has been a very clear low turnout, just because people are not coming into the city, right? Mm-hmm. And that has directly affected our businesses. Numbers have gone down, and that extends to turnover and income.
Right. Yeah. Maybe I don't know if you've got any response to that.
Yeah. I wanted to make a point here that there are two things that I've seen people trying to put together which should be separated. The current liquidity problem in the economy is not really about the elections. The current liquidity problem that people don't have cash to do this and this has been financial imprudence from the current government. And we have got to a point that we can't afford the budget that we are fronting because of that. Physical indiscipline, we have seen corruption, we have seen projects that haven't matured quite early, those mega infrastructure projects. We have seen quite a number of physical indisciplines that has led to the liquidity problem that we have. So the election period has just been a bogeyman that people have used specifically. But the election period, over and above every time that we have an election, it has always been that way. The uncertainty has always been there. But this one, we got to a point where a liquidity problem caught up with us at an election period.
All right. So now I want you to kind of boil that down, so that for the Mwananchi who may not understand the big language, for instance, that's a point you brought about. How does that affect me being able to afford photography at Alex's shop?
Okay.
Yeah, how does that, what you're talking about, the imprudence in your word, the imprudence on the state side?
Okay. So when we talk about liquidity specifically, when economists say liquidity problem, it means that people don't have funds or money, household, your income, to buy this and that, mama mboga here, the guys who come for photography, and all that. The things that you can have transactions with. So the problem here is that, you know, that income is mostly determined by government policies in terms of taxes, in terms of directives on what incentives. So what we have currently, like our tax regime, we collect around 21% of the GDP, which is one of the highest in Africa. So you look at that high tax regime, you look at the current corruption that is happening. You know, corruption basically is removing funds that were supposed to be developed and people getting it into their pockets and then stashing it somewhere. So the economy is stuffed with some money. So there is that also. There is that physical imprudence that we see, that we're having a budget that we can't afford, so we are borrowing too much money. So when we're borrowing this too much money, there are those that have very high interest rates. So government has to use more of their funds to pay these debts. Instead, so it works at the expense of this money going down to the mwananchi, where government develops and then people can have that money. So there is a ripple effect of that money. So that is the current physical indiscipline or imprudence that I'm saying that has caught up with us in this electioneering period.
All right. Churchill, he's mentioned about the tax regime. And I know taxes are pretty much how we try to finance our own budget and the likes. Do we hope that, do we foresee, we've had Paul talking about, like he's mentioned, our tax regime is really high. People feel overtaxed, you know. If we're to be taxed less, would it be a practical thing, or would we be getting ourselves into a deeper hole?
Well, the issue about tax can be looked at different ways. Well, lowering the tax base or the tax revenue, I mean, will now bring us back to the point that Tony has raised. The borrowing will now escalate, because at the end of each and every financial year, there's the expenditure segment and how to fund that expenditure. So you're looking at revenue, whereby your internal funds generated are now through the taxes. Over and above that, now there's the borrowing segment. So if you undertax and there's these needs that have to be met, both the recurrent and development expenditure, you're looking at a situation whereby now the stock of the public debt will now grow higher, which will now exacerbate the problem. So the issue is quite dicey, in my opinion. I think Treasury has to be realistic as a first base to, as they come up with these targets for KRA, because KRA, look at it year on year, they have really been aggressive.
They've not hit also their targets.
Yeah, but now that brings the issue about the aggressiveness on ambitious targets that being set by Treasury. Last year, they met close to they were shy 0.8% of the target that they had been given. But now this year, despite all these things, you're looking at the economy is quite, has been on a downtrend, but yet the revenue target is quite ambitious, in our opinion. So they are at a place whereby they are still on a rat race trying to meet the targets that they have been met here. So it's quite a tricky situation, but I think that it now comes to the fiscal prudence with the government. They really need to prioritize on the recurrent and the development, more of development rather than recurrent, so that it will be able to boost the economy, and then it will have a ripple effect on the tax revenues going forward.
All right. And speaking of tax, and right now, even as we speak, KRA is having a tax summit at the University of Nairobi. And the theme is Rethink, Remodel and Rebuild, Enhancing Tax Systems for Sustainable Economic Development. Now, this puts again KRA on the spot in terms of they've been unable to raise hit their targets year on year. It's become, and every other year, the government, like he said, Treasury, will spike the budget level, you know. Yet, you know, you didn't pass this class, but when you go to the next class, you're being given more homework, you know. And so this again, they talk about trust among taxpayers. So let me come to Alex. For you who is in business, do you feel that your business is overtaxed, or do you feel that some taxes which may not be necessary or may be a hindrance to you being able to deliver?
Well, talking about taxes, I think prior to just getting into this entrepreneurial field, I really never felt the pinch of taxes, or when people talked about corruption. But right now, considering that every time you you work on your end to grow your business and to make income. You're also making income for the country, rather through taxation, right? If you hit certain turnovers in a year, out of your profit, a certain percentage, right, over and above, VAT has to go into the government. So I think it hurts quite a bit when you're obligated. And let me tell you, if you just miss a deadline for your taxes, there are those emails that come in and penalties that come with that, which you still need to pay up. And after all that, you look at it from now a bit of a national perspective and wonder, am I after paying those taxes, do I feel as a custodian, right, of and a citizen in this country, do I feel like they are being used appropriately towards creating an enabling environment for me as a business person? So let's just say, I think the president mentioned it yesterday, accountability is key from the government. Otherwise, it messes up with the psyche and at times motivation. Yes, of course, you have to work for your family and everything, but in the long run, if the government is not keen, and if the tax man or whoever is accountable for does not seem to make us feel like our taxes are doing some worthwhile business, then it's not a very good scenario for.
Oh, so you feel like what you're paying is okay, but the things that you don't feel the fruit is coming.
I don't feel the return. I don't feel the comeback. Well, the things you talk about at a very national level, like we're making roads and infrastructure and all that. But what about just coming back down and having some real incentives for businessmen, as in to the point that it's tangible for us, right? It can be distant and say with very high terms that we have developed by this percentage, but am I feeling it on the ground? Am I feeling like the atmosphere created both at national level and even at a county level? Yes, especially now that we're in Nairobi here and we're dealing with the county government. Are we feeling that we're getting getting back from our licenses and from our taxes? Are we feeling that they're making the atmosphere conducive for us to even prosper more? So I have to say that figures don't make too much sense to me from statistics.
The big ones, yeah.
Yeah, but we need to see something tangible that we can relate with and we can feel.
All right, and it brings up a very good point. What is this disconnect that many people have brought up between when we hear like CS Dann Mwangi, Industry, Trade and Cooperatives, CS, is usually big on saying how we have been, the World Bank has rated us, ease of doing business, we've really improved. Now we're at number 81, if I'm not, or around 80, 81. There's a lot of big talk, and we've been ranked globally as, a stellar performer in ABCD economically. But when you come to the ground, we find that the Mwananchi does not feel, I'll still go and buy my unga a bit more expensive, apart from when they give a subsidy, for instance. What is this disconnect between the big news that usually, the big pronouncements and the actual impact on the ground?
Yeah, indeed, there's really been the disconnect, as you said, between what's happening at the macro level and what's happening at the micro level, yeah. And it's something that, the trickle-down effect of the economy is really not felt to the economy. For instance, if you look at the second quarter, you'll hear 5% growth. But to a person on the ground, can they really relate to that one? They're just seeing that things are really escalating day in, day out. If you look at the inflation numbers, yes, true, they have really come off to 5%, 5.72%, which for Treasury, the policymakers, it's within their target band. But to somebody on the ground, they're still buying their milk at 55 shillings from 50 shillings, like a year behind. So it's something that still not really connected to the ground, yeah, to that extent, yeah. But although there's that disconnect, I can also say that there are some of the indicators that even the analysts, the macroeconomic analysts look at, but also somehow show that it points to what's happening on the ground. For instance, there's this indicator, the Purchasing Managers Index, which surveys the private sector segment in the economy. It surveys farms across different sectors, and what you've seen in the last 6 months, we've seen that it's been giving a number below 50. A number below 50 shows that it's contraction activities. Above 50 is expansion activities. So the last 6 months has been quite a downtrend, showing contraction activities, which just cements the fact that all this protracted electioneering period has had a detrimental impact on the private business, as Alex was mentioning a while ago. So it's quite something that the private sector, which somehow consumes a major part of the economic activity, it contributes, close to 70% of the GDP. So whereas the sentiment from that segment is quite negative, it somehow replicates what the common person on the ground is feeling. So I think to an extent, the macro side is quite a bit elevated, is quite aloof of what's happening in the ground, but at least there are some key indicators that are pointing rather what's happening in the ground.
All right, maybe Tony, you can tell us how then do we how do we connect these two? Connect these big news items in terms of the macro level, like he's saying, where we're talking about Kenya, ease of doing business has gone, which also is based on, specifics when it comes to speed of registering a business, getting your licenses, etc. How then, what then is the connection point? Or is it one of those things that we have to wait for some time before we can actually enjoy their fruit? Connection point to what the Mwananchi would want to enjoy, being lower cost of living?
Yes. Last time I was here last week, I was saying that in our economy, when you analyze our economic infrastructure, we have an inverted economy. Inverted in the sense that the economy and policymakers work and make policies for the formal market, when the formal market comprises of 10% in terms of unemployment. So that's how we look at it. It may not be 10% in terms of contribution to the GDP, but in terms of employment specifically, it's 10%. So when you talk about World Bank ease of doing business, how they do, the model they do is they look for questionnaires and things like that. So they go to the mostly guys in the informal market. What are you experiencing on the tariff costs of power and all that? So they come up with a model of formal market specifically. So it doesn't work. It's a disconnect, as you said. It doesn't work for the guys at the informal market. So how do we incorporate guys in the informal market? As you mentioned about the PMI, that's one of the things that we can use. So we need to develop other models on how we can analyze and formalize policies for the informal market. But currently, as we speak, the two sides are separate. And you find that guys in the informal market are not there because they're in the informal market, but they drifted that way because they couldn't find an opportunity in the formal market.
So how do we connect them?
How do we connect the two? We can look at employment numbers. We can look at tax. We can use taxes. We see that taxes are contributed mostly by there is a huge number of formal markets, there is a huge number of informal markets. So what do we incentivize that these guys who are in the informal market come to the formal market? Specifically, they are registered properly, they are structured properly, they have incentives that can help them build the market, their own sectors. So that is the main thing that we haven't seen policymakers focusing on how do we structure these people to come on the informal market, because the informality of these people is they can't be traced by those who are analyzing the economy.
Okay. All right. And speaking of the economy, when it comes to business, especially for the SMEs, one of the biggest issues of late has been interest rates. I know the last time Alex was on our air, it was because the bank the bank where his company has an account was taken to receivership. So he's one of those who are caught in a bit of a situation. And so I'll come back to Alex now and tell us, maybe, I'm now coming with the convention about financial services is a broader conversation, but now in terms of interest rates and access to credit, because you need money to run your business. At points you want to expand, your equipment is not cheap. It's not stuff that you can just easily find at throwaway prices. If you want quality, So it means you need to go and get loans. How has that experience been for you as a business person?
Well, personally, I've had a not very good experience with financial institutions giving credit for business. And I think that's even gotten worse with the capping of the interest rates. Banks have become quite tight. So, in fact, just going back to what you raised earlier, you know, which may have happened about a year or so back, you know, the amount of scrutiny that you would go through as a business person, you know, prior to qualifying for a loan was quite almost impossible, right? You know, of course, I know the financial institutions have their interest in terms of just checking your credit value in terms of your ability to pay back.
Yes.
But it was quite stringent, and therefore you resort to other methods to get your money. I'm not talking about digging a tunnel and robbing a bank, but you
and hiding not too far from there.
Yeah, but you resort to other systems. At times, you know, there are circles and joining such institutions apart from the mainstream banks, and there's also soft loans from family and friends who believe in your vision. So you resort to a different system because at times there's also that fear for. One of my mentors, you know, tells me that you know, you take a business loan and you don't even understand the mathematics that goes behind the interest. As in, no sooner do you think you've paid it up, then you realize there was a clause or there was this fee, and by the time you calculate how much you paid back to the institution, it surpasses even the interest rate you were given, and you know, you can't even get a clear explanation. It's like you can't get a clear explanation as to how that happened. So for that, some of us tend to shy away from that from the banks due to difficulty, and you look for other systems from.
Right, and I think that's a very good point to pick up on, and we'll get back to it in just a bit because that one is a bit of an explosive one. I want to cross over to Mombasa where Peter Mwangi is, and will be giving us some conversation there to be in regards to exports and imports, which is a significant part of our economy because the balance currently is against Kenya's favor. We've got imports not being balanced with exports. So Mwangi, tell us what you have from your end.
Thank you. Yes, indeed. We are at the Awanad Container Freight Station in Changamwe, that is in the county of Mombasa. And today we are focusing on export and import of cargo here at the port of Mombasa, as well as the country at large. And when we came here, already some activity going on right behind us. Some containers being moved and being handled at this particular facility. And also actually right behind us we found some Kenya Revenue Authority officers already conducting 100% verification of one of the containers here. Of course, in terms of this particular business, they are called the 20 TEUs or the 20 equivalent units here, and they were conducting that verification to ensure that the goods that have been declared in the manifest when they were being shipped in are the ones that are actually in that container. It's an activity that goes on for almost all cargo that comes to the through the port of Mombasa. And remember, the container freight stations were established to ensure that they decongest the port of Mombasa. They are involved in handling cargo, and right now I want to speak to Mr. Benedict Awiti, who is the director of Awanad Container Freight Stations, and today I want to talk about how the business has been for the last 5 years. First of all, what exactly do you do at Awanad?
Okay, Peter, we are a container freight station, which means basically we deal with container handling and efficiency of the cargo. So basically we're an extension of the port. When you bring your cargo, KPA gives it to us so that we can store and do the handling over here before onward transportation and to the various clients.
Other people deal with containers and vehicles. Do you deal with both or just one?
We deal with both containers, we deal with units, vehicles, we deal with both.
Talk to us about exports and imports. Which of those have you been handling more, and what goods exactly have you been handling for clients?
Mostly we deal with imports. I would say imports make up 90% of the cargo we receive. And in terms of the items, of the products, it's various. We could get from electronic goods, hardwares, and even cars inside containers. So basically, we deal all sorts. We cannot really give a preference on one.
And the 10% you handle about exports, what exactly are these goods that you handle?
We have a lot of raw materials going out of the country. We have manganese ore, for example, which is being mined in Kilifi. We have some plants coming in, and mostly it's raw materials, we'd say, because most cargo coming in, they go back with empty containers. So we find that the raw materials, they are better for transporting longer distances.
In terms of the growth of this particular business, in terms of exports and imports, has there been an increase or a decrease? What can you say?
Well, it depends on how you look at it. For us, we could say that there's been a slight decrease, but in terms of cargo coming in, mostly because of the political situation in the country, which affected us. We find most importers don't want to bring in goods and they don't know the situation of the country, the tension and all that. So we find that the last 3 to 4 months, the cargo has been a bit, it's dropped a bit, especially during the election period all the way up to maybe just yesterday, the inauguration of the president.
Last week, the Kenya Ports Authority released statistics for business in terms of cargo that they've handled in the first 9 months of 2017 as compared to the same period last year. And they said there was a 10% growth in terms of the cargo that passed through the port of Mombasa. Would you say the same has been for Awanan?
You know, KPA handles a lot of cargo. I would say that the information is correct, but we would have done more, because comparing the period, you can't really say the situation. But the period must be affected with politics, and that's the reason why. But to me, I'd say we'd handle more. We've handled more, but we could handle even more.
Yes. And maybe my final question is about the challenges that you have seen in the last 5 years, and also going forward in the next 5 years. We've seen the government trying to introduce the standard gauge railway. We understand the freight service will start operating next year. What do you think that will be in terms of one of the challenges, and what would you be calling on the government to do?
Well, the SGR is there, and it will reduce our revenue, actually our cargo. We are looking at with the SGR, it's all going to be about service. Let me just be honest with you, because we are giving clients customized service, a better service as a company. We are ensuring your cargo. We are giving you container handling. With systems are okay. So basically, we will want a situation whereby we give a good rate also to our clients, and I think it will not affect us that much. But also, as the government is putting a lot of infrastructure in place, we expect that to also affect our cargo capacity and our cargo population.
Maybe very quickly before we conclude and we go to the next guest, is about infrastructure and government legislation. What would you say about that?
I would urge the government to engage more of the importers, because we want to get more importation. And as I can see, the government needs to engage the private agencies. They need to engage the importers, find out what their challenges are. Let the importers tell them terms of tariff, terms of the rate, terms of the duties. You know.
All right, Peter Mwangi, we seem to have lost his signal for a bit, but at least we've gotten some good information. There are some good statistics. We've seen that imports that company handles is 90% of the cargo that they handle, which is significant. It just pretty much goes to show and to reiterate the narrative, or just the fact that our imports, what we are importing is so much more than what we are exporting. And we are exporting raw materials, which in itself is another issue. We are not exporting a lot of final products, and a lot of the raw materials are from the agricultural sector. And before we get into the conversation here, just pick up on what Mwangangi has been having there. We cross over to the county of Nakuru, where Bridget Ngana is standing by to have the voices of some people in the agriculture sector to give us a sense of what the experience has been for them with the electioneering period, and what their aspirations or their expectations are going forward now that we have the government formally in place in terms of the president and his deputy. Bridget.
Yes, a very good morning to you, Dann Mwangi, and we are at FMD East Africa, and this is one of the premier farms that have been at the heart of Nakuru County, because Nakuru predominantly is an agricultural town, and this FMD was one of the farms that has progressed the mechanization of agriculture here in Nakuru County. And so we are going to be speaking with the sales manager of FMD, and she's going to tell us how business has been, because agriculture is also the core of Kenya's economy. We do rely heavily on agriculture. And so, Susan, thank you so much for your time. Sorry, Lucy, rather. So you can just tell us maybe how has business been during this electioneering period, and maybe what are your expectations as farms in terms of how you deal with your clientele going forward now that the president has been sworn in?
Thank you very much, Bridget. What we have actually experienced as an agribusiness is we've had challenges right from last year when the capping of interest rates came. And most of our customers, being people who are depending on the banks to give them finance, faced a shock of, I can't get this finance. Then beginning of the year, we had the drought, and then we went into campaign mode. So really for us, business has been very difficult. It's been one challenge after another. Just when we think we are about to recover, then something else happens. And finally now we're hoping with the swearing in of the president we'll actually have a hockey stick reaction where the economy just picks up and business goes back to normal. Yes.
Maybe tell us in terms of your clientele, because you're having large-scale farmers and small-scale farmers. Do you meet both of these clients, or you mainly focus on large-scale farms? Because I can see most of the equipment that you have here on display maybe are for people who have acres and acres of land.
Not really, not really. Our company caters right from the small farmer who is doing maybe 5 acres. Yeah, that's why you have the very small tractor. We actually call it the farm in a box. That tractor is meant for people who are just getting into farming, and therefore they need the small equipment. You can use that tractor on your 2 acres, 3 acres, then do for your neighbor. It will create employment. Then we go to the middle scale farmers, which are the farmers who have about 20 and above acres, or the contractor farmers, because there's a segment of Kenyans who have become contractor farmers, and they actually move from one region to another, preparing land for other people and getting paid for it. They plant and etc. Then we have the commercial farmers who are planning for what they're going to plant, and it doesn't matter what is going on politically, because they work on a business plan. You have to plant at a certain time, and the rain will not wait for you, so you have to plant. So we cater for everybody. Our range of implements caters again for all the tractors that we provide. You have equipment for land preparation, you have equipment for herbicide application and for harvesting. We also have another sector that's coming up, that is for the dairy farmers, because hay production has really picked up very well. And really this year, despite everything, it's one sector that has done very well. We have a lot of people who are getting into hay, and they're saying this is a profitable business because it's not really depending so much on the rain. So as FMD, we cater for everybody. Our service department, as I mentioned earlier in our conversation, the technicians we have been doing this business for a very long time. Yes. And some of them have worked with the Massey Ferguson tractors for over 30 years. Or so, okay. And therefore their knowledge in repairing and maintaining the equipment is top-notch.
Maybe you had mentioned that you do expect that the economy will normalize and everything will be on a peak kind of mood, because we are moving from the political era. What from an investment point of view, where do you see maybe your company, maybe your clientele going in the next 5 years or in the next 4 years under the leadership of President Uhuru Kenyatta? Because how has been your business in the last 5 years, and what do you project that being now moving forward, should the political economy of the country be constant and favorable for you?
All right, it's interesting. You only look at the political, but I would also like to look at the climatic. Seasonally, we've always had 4 good years and then 1 bad year. This year we've had 1 bad year politically and 1 bad year in season. So going forward, what we expect are really good things. We expect the next season the farmers are going to be able to harvest and get a profit out of what they have planted. We expect with the stability of the government being sworn in and everybody now ready to work and get going, the economy to get vibrant. And once there's liquidity, people have money, it all comes down to somebody has to put food on the table, and therefore more people will be interested in putting food on the table, and therefore more equipment will be going out. We'll be seeing more farmers getting into farming, more people who have been just stuck on, I do this way, wanting to explore different ways of doing it, and that is where we come in. You want to do it this way, we give you the appropriate advice for what you need to do, and we help you along the line, because we never let go of any customer. Once you buy equipment from us, we actually keep you with us all the time till when you dispose of that machine.
And maybe climate change is a reality that we are trying to deal with right now. We've seen world over, there have been a sensitivity in terms of how climate change is affecting food production. And as somebody who is in business, are you doing any innovations, or are you also churning out products that would cater to this problem that is a global phenomenon? Because you mentioned there was drought. We do not know if the rains would improve, and this in a sense does affect you directly because you are in the food production sector.
I'm glad Bridget you're asking that question, because in the last few years we've actually tried to recommend to farmers to go to what is called conservation or tillage, which is planting your seed but using minimum disturbance of the soil. We have seen farmers who have actually adopted that, and in years when they're saying the rains are minimal, we actually had a very good produce. Yeah, we have had case examples of that. Farmers in Laikipia, you change the crop or you do your timing very well, and you do dry planting, and therefore you get a good produce out of it. We have equipment for subsoiling, which means you're not turning the soil all the time. We have seen farmers who have changed and moved from maybe just maize production and gone into hay. Yeah, just because of the climate change again. So yes, we advise and we tell you, check the weather pattern. Yeah, the weather pattern is not just about waiting for the meteorological department to tell you this is what is going to happen. Go to the internet, the information is there. We have farmers who have adopted that, and they're doing that. And with that, you find either they'll plant sorghum or they'll plant maize, or they decide to go for hay. We're there to give them the advice, and that's what we do. So yeah, climatic change is a reality. We just have to deal with it. We don't have to plant maize when we know very well there will not be enough rain for the maize. Plant something else that is short-term. Maybe go for hay, maybe go for barley, yeah, something that will give you a profit. Yes.
Thank you so much. And that is Lucy from FND East Africa giving us tidbits on how business has been in the course of this prolonged political period and what they expect now moving forward. They do believe that the economy will stabilize, and in a sense it will also attract customers. They cater for the agricultural sector of this country, and they do believe that they have the solutions in terms of mechanization of agriculture, improving in crop production rather, and in a sense ensuring that this country is food secure in their own way. They also are sensitive to the challenge of climate change. So Dan, we have not yet stopped our discussion here in Nakuru County. We will be heading over to the hospitality sector, where we will be meeting people who are depending on the tourism sector, because you know Nakuru has the world-renowned Lake Nakuru National Park that is the most visited national park in Kenya, and we do believe that we do have a collage of international and local tourists who have been visiting this county. We are at the heart of the country, and so expect more from us, Dan.
Thank you very much, Bridget. We really look forward to that as we look at the different sectors of the economy, as well as some interesting information there we get again from the agriculture sector player, talking about how it's been a difficult year for them, coming from the interest rate capping, like we're talking about just now, where it became very hard to access credit, then moving on to the drought, and now the electioneering period, which was extended. And so we'll be getting back to Bridget Ngana later on, where she shall be speaking to someone who's going to give some further into the conversation of tourism. And now we cross back to Peter Mwangi. We signal is back up, where he'll be having another conversation on that end, taking us back to the talk on exports and imports. Mwangi.
Thank you, Dan. Indeed, just before we went to Nakuru, we were talking about the business here at the port of Mombasa, as well as at the container freight stations, and we heard from Awanad on how the business has been for the last 5 years and what they would like to see in the next 5 years. And now with me I have one of the officials from the container freight station associations. Tell us, what are some of the challenges you would say you have seen from the other operators of the container freight stations here in Mombasa over the last 5 years?
Well, thank you. I wouldn't say that we've had more challenges, but we are just urging the government agencies to be involved in the CFS operators and on any development that is coming in, that is in terms of logistics, because like we've had SGR coming in place, and you find that most of the CFS operators have not been involved. So we just urge our government people to do so, and then we may be able to assist in some of solutions of business.
And in terms of other government agencies helping and assisting in clearance of cargo efficiently, would you say there have been satisfactory developments on that side?
Well, we have the KRA people who have been helping in terms of cargo clearance. We've not had our members, that is the clearing people, complaining about it. So as CFS operators, we've been handling the clearing people, and we won't say that we've had any issues on that. Yes.
And maybe the last one about infrastructure. And you guys are involved in transporting this cargo from Mombasa to other parts of the country and other parts of East Africa. Would you say that the infrastructure that we have currently is satisfactory?
Yes, I would say so, because right now you can see the road that have been constructed, and it's our hope as CFS operators that we're gonna have a simple or rather easy way of transporting our cargo, that is from Port of Mombasa to our CFS operations places. And we want to say that it's a plus to the government that is taking care of the CFS operators and any other person who is doing cargo transfer in Mombasa and the country. Yeah.
Thank you for talking to us about what CFS operators here in Mombasa think about the business, and of course they are saying they would like to see more engagement from the government in terms of new developments such as the standard gauge railway. Remember that the freight service is said to start operating in next year, and they would like to see that. Also, they would like to contribute in that business and see also the benefit in terms of the business that comes through the Port of Mombasa. That is all from Mombasa. Done. Of course, operations are still ongoing here, containers being moved from one place to another, just the normal operations that go on at the container freight station as well as the Port of Mombasa. And of course, we'll continue to hear more from stakeholders, what they think about this particular business. For now, over to you, Dan.
Thank you very much, Peter Mwangi, giving us some good conversations there in regard to exports and imports. And like we were saying, the trade imbalance is a problem to the economy. It is very skewed against Kenya's favor, and we shall be getting to that with my panel here just to discuss and just see what we can pick out of this and what needs to be done, trend chart a way forward. But that will be in the next hour. For now, we take a short break. We'll be back after this. Be sure to stay tuned. economy looks like in terms of the aspirations of the different business persons, and as well as what analysts and economists are telling us about it. And we shall be also hearing, as we've been doing in the previous hour, the voices and the sounds and the expectations, possibly frustrations of the business persons, the mwananchi, the person who, like we said, is the one who's breaking their back to make sure that ends meet and to make sure that we can put in what we need to into the economy, to make sure that we can actually hit the GDP growth that we have been told we are meant to be getting. As the government has said, it has revised it down to 5.1%. Some analysts say we might not hit that, may not even hit 5%, which is again a different conversation. But I'd like to bring back our panel here and just pick up on a conversation that we're having before we cross over to Mombasa, talk about exports, which we shall then touch on later on. And which this is something that also came up when Bridget Ngano was speaking to the lady in Nakuru about agriculture. The matter of interest rate caps, which is something that, some analysts and economists have been saying possibly the government might choose to scrap the interest rate cap after the elections, because may have had some political influence, so to speak, in terms of what the outcome would be if they did so. And so Alex was telling us about how you've had the challenges when it comes to accessing your funds. For you, what exactly was the situation? What did the bank tell you, and what did you opt for in terms of getting your financing?
So my scenario was such that in our business at times and perhaps that I think extends to many businesses, you need some form of credit, especially when you have an assured PO, for example, or you have an assured job with a client who's consistent.
Yes.
You need to pump in money just to facilitate the job. And most corporates will, pay back after, say, 30 days or 45 or 70, depending on who you're dealing with. So I'll go to the bank. I don't even need a long-term loan, for example. I'm not looking for, something that will last years. I want something short, something that will facilitate and then pay back as soon as.
More working capital.
Yes, I need some quick working capital. And the challenge I was finding was it was so hard to convince the bank, and I thought my books were looking good, having been in the same bank for perhaps over 6 or 7 years, and having grown over time. Let me say that and I said this earlier, that banks have a responsibility to protect themselves from bad debt. However, at times they may not sense the what do you call it? Understand you where you are, and perhaps the bank I was in then was one of the best placed SME banks in terms of understanding people in that space. Mm-hmm. And having said that, after all that, it didn't come through. It didn't come through, and that was months and months of pursuing that. And having said that, so you moved on. You move on, and you can find a few human beings who believe in your vision, and actually facilitate you. You show them your documents. You convince them they have some loose money, and they trust you with it. You do the job, and once you're paid, you pay back.
So for you, are you done with banks?
Well, let me say, of course, we have to. We do work with banks. The system is such that even payment systems have to be through banks. So you have to work with the bank. But when it comes to credit, unless I'm not sure we have somebody who has yet to fit that space, especially for SMEs, somebody who is willing to grow with you, because people are working hard, and I think we need somebody who can fit into that space and just give sensible or worthwhile credit services to people who are birthing businesses.
And do you find it even harder for you being in the creative industry? Is it harder for people in the creative industry to get credit, or is it the same across the board?
Well, let me say in the last few years, the creative industry has picked up. There's been a bit more of appreciation for the arts. And I think there's consciousness about that. We'll even see a few corporates actually, really sponsoring a bit more of the music industry, the film industry, the photography industry. So it's been good as an industry. I just not too sure that the bank still appreciates that. The bank still appreciate that. Let me be honest. The bank has not been my best friend. I think, it's not been my best friend. We have sought other systems to work with. So I'll be honest, we use banks to receive payments. But for credit, I think until, they they perhaps review the policies and become more SME friendly. I've had a bad experience as a small businessman.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me bring you in first in terms of SMEs have been complaining. This is not a unique complaint or concern to Alex. It's something that we've had across the board, with banks being less friendly, so to speak, in terms of their credit, in terms of giving loans to SMEs especially. If, say, with the interest rate cap is not scrapped, what options are there in terms of the, what can banks try and do to bridge that gap?
Well, before I get into the question, I can just weigh on what Alex has said.
Yes.
We've seen that this interest rate capping has brought a bit of some risk profiling to the SMEs. That's where the Alexes are not able to get credit from the banks. So what we've seen is now banks, even if you look at their statements, they are more inclined to lend to the government now, hence, rather than the SME segment. So of course, it has a ripple effect, because the government is being seen as a safe haven rather than the perceived risky SME segment. So of course, it has an effect on the segment private sector. We've seen that the credit growth in the private sector has touched rock bottoms. It hit 1.6 in the month of August. Right now it's had a trajectory 2% as of October, but still these levels are still below what could be something solid to support the growth in the sector. So for the SMEs right now in this kind of environment, they are now forced now to look at credit from the SACCOs and the likes, which are a bit rather supportive rather than getting it from the banking segment, which are risk profiling the SME segment and also the small customers. They rather just lend to the high net worth clients who have a bit of some bargaining power rather than getting it into the perceived risky segment.
Right.
Yeah.
And even now that we've actually touched on the creative industry and how the creatives, may be having some of their challenges when it comes to accessing credit, or just the challenges in the environment. He's talked about, aside from even just financing, we've seen how different people in the creative space have had to really struggle and work their way up, and we're still not there. In terms of as the creatives, they're still not there. It's better than what was the case a number of years ago. We've seen people back in the day, somebody wanted to be in theater, but they're told, no, do it as a hobby, get a real job, do that as a hobby, then you can complement, right? And so just to keep on this conversation about the creative sector and what exactly the feeling is, we're going to cross over to the county of Bungoma, where Zacchaeus Mosame has got a few people in the creative industry who can actually lend their voice and their views to the same, that can actually add some further into our conversation. Zacchaeus.
Thank you so much, Dan. We are coming live to you from here in Webuye town, whereby we are going to have a session with some of the artists here, local artists from the Luya community. And then to wrap up it all, we have a producer who has been making sure that their songs get to the market. We will start off straight away with the producer, Geoffrey Wasilwa, who has been in this field for a while, but we'll just go straight to him to get how maybe he has what really pushed him to start a music production studio here, and how it has benefited him, if it has really helped him in any way. Geoffrey, we are live on NTV, and we want you to tell us shortly maybe what really pushed you to start this studio, and has it really helped you? You can use Kiswahili.
Okay, studio hii nilianza karibu miaka 6 iliyopita, baada ya kugundua kwamba kuna vipaji vya wasanii ambavyo lazima walikuwa wanataka kurekodi, but studio zilikuwa mbali sana. Kutoka hapa kwenda Nairobi ni pesa nyingi sana, so ikabidi nikaenda shuleni nikajifunza music production mimi mwenyewe nikiwa msanii, na nikakuja nikafungua studio yangu.
Studio yako labda hujataja jina, inaitwaje? Inapatikana wapi?
Studio yangu inaitwa Dynamic Studios / Technic Studios, inapatikana hapa Webuye, hapa karibu na shule ya Webuye SA, but within the environs za Webuye town.
Labda umewahi faidi vipi kutokana na studio hii?
Wajua, nikianza kuconvince wasanii kwamba mimi pia naweza kuproduce zile nyimbo ambazo wanaweza yani the same quality ambayo wanaenda kwa studio zile ziko mbali kama Nairobi, Kisumu, ilikuwa shida, but ilifika mahali quality yangu ilipokubalika, wasanii wakaanza kuja, wakaamini kwamba hata hapa pia wanaweza toa the same quality ile ambayo wanaweza toa wakiwa kule Nairobi.
Labda kuna baadhi ya wasanii katika jamii hii na kutoka kwingine ambao unaweza wataja kwa haraka tu ambao labda maichunguza nao kazi hapa.
Okay, nimefanyia wasanii wengi. Mmoja ni MCA ambaye sasa hizi ni MCA Webie Jua Kali. It's me ambaye nilimuadvise ya kwamba bwana yafaa tubadilishe mtindo kidogo, na introduce kwa new technology ya music mpaka ikampa sifa mpaka saa hizi ni MCA. Kuna Steve K kijana ambaye amejulikana sana. Ukitaja Luya Music huwezi taja wasanii wawili watatu bila kutaja Steve K. Kuna Kenneth Khaemba ambao wengi wanamjua sana, Chapa Ilale. Kuna Luya Explosion Band ambao uliwakuta wakiwa wana rekodi muziki kwangu.
Asante sana. Labda ukimtaja Kenneth Khaemba, nimemwona Kenneth, tafadhali. Kenneth Khaemba, wewe unazungumziwa kweli kwamba wewe umelelewa katika studio hii, na labda what has been your experience katika janibu hii ya muziki?
Hapo ni ukweli. Mimi kwanza hii kazi ya usanii kwanza ni ya ukoo. Babangu alikuwa msanii, babu yangu alikuwa msanii, hasa ile ni ya damu. Na kwanza kurekodi advice nilitoa kwa producer wangu ambaye anaitwa Geoffrey Wasilwa. Akaona muziki yangu ilikuwa tamu sana, ndiye akani advice kuanza kurekodi, na vile nilianza yenyewe ikashika.
Labda kwa ufupi tu kidogo kuimalizia kwa sababu ya muda. Tupe line wale ambao wanakutazama, wale mashabiki wanakutazama nyimbo zako, kwa mfano ile ambaye umeimba na ukaona inakugusa, labda wetu kutupatia sanza moja sekunde kadhaa kidogo kabla nikuachilie.
Haya, kuna moja inaitwa Maimutiti ambayo imetia fora sana.
Tupe kidogo tu. Kidogo.
Kenneth Khaemba, eya wanyama kambola kambona, embolele bapapa bahulije, embolele banyange bahulije, maibosi mungo bakana, mayumutiti na yali hosi, njevele ni mwenya muno me,
Asante. Kwa ufupi labda inamaanisha nini wimbo huu? Unamaanisha nini?
Sawa. Sasa hapo inamaanisha ya kwamba okay, kuna wazee wengi
kwa ufupi
wakiwa na bibi wawili, anaegemea upande mmoja. Sana yule bibi mdogo anamlinda vizuri, hata kwenda haja anaenda mahali pazuri, na yule mwingine anaenda hata kwenye mio. Ni hivyo. Sasa ndio maana nauliza, kwani yule mkubwa ana shida gani?
Asante. Wa mwisho kwa dakika sekunde kadhaa tu kidogo, utaanza jina lako alafu useme wewe ni nani?
Mimi naitwa
toa kofia hii tuweze kuona.
Mimi naitwa Lawrence Mwanja, Luya Explosion Band. Kusema ukweli, huyu Wasilwa producer wetu amefanya vizuri sana kutuletea studio hapa karibu.
Okay, asante. Dan, that is it. I think because of in terms of time, I'll have to stop there. But did you also know that Mwasame here is not just... I can also do these things because I'm a Mzani. As I hand over to Ojuang, you can also get a taste of this. Yeah, that is it. Back to you, Dan.
Thank you very much, Mwasame. Definitely, you should probably do an album and we'll launch it right here on NTV Today if you need. We will support you. I believe you can have an arrangement. Thank you very much, Zacchaeus Mwasame, not only the reporter, but also the artist who is within his circle. You could see he's very excited because, as you've now learned, he's also an artist, so he's in his element. And as we continue the conversation, let's cross over to Migori, where we have Bernard Ojwang having, in Rongo that is, Bernard Ojwang was going to speak to a group of people there to just get a sense of how the business scene is there in regards to the elections and the fact that the electioneering period is over. Ojwang.
Thank you very much, Dan Mwangi. We are live here at Rongo Market. It has been quite hectic, and productive period for the business community here in the country. Kenya's economy has really felt a pinch of the prolonged electioneering period, and which has really had Yeah, and remember, just some times back, not all that long, when we were having anti-IBC demonstrations in the country, which were experienced in some parts of the country. Business community really faced a lot of challenges. They were counting losses on a daily basis as the demonstrators were looting at their shops. And as you can remember, yesterday also, when the president President Uhuru Kenyatta was commencing his second and the last term as the president of this country, he did say that he will ensure good and cool and business environment in the country, and also urging foreign investors to come in Kenya to do business as a way of promoting or improving the economy of this country. Right now, we are live, as I've said, we are live here in Rongo Market. Of course, it is a market day, and the businessmen here are saying that there is a poor cash flow, which is per day. They are not making the exact amount which they have been making there before. And currently, we are joined by some of them just to get their views on how politics has affected their business for the past 5 years, and what should be the solution, and what are they expecting in the next 5 years of President Uhuru's final term. Maybe could you just please tell us what's your name?
Okay, thank you, Juang. I'm Zilpa Odlin Ochuodo from Rongo Town. I'm a business lady. Yeah.
Could you just please tell us how has business affected you people as a business community for the past 5 years?
Yeah, Juang, as you can see, Rongo Market, it's not been like this. You can see people are very scattered, but here in Rongo, when it's a market day, you can't even find a place to put a coin. The cash flow has been down. People really fear, and they don't know what they can do. Yeah.
What do you think? What should be done so as at least to make the economy be where it was there before?
Just because you are seeing how business is doing very low, customers are not coming, and for us, like me, I'm a business lady, we can't even sell. People fear, like right today, they were asking, how is town? Is there people there? Are there things about anything? Because of the fear of what happened yesterday. They fear life. In any case, they see a policeman, they run.
We shall try and get back to Rongo once the signal stabilizes, but you could already hear some of the concerns from the lady there, Madam Ochozo, who's saying that the business has been slow, especially in this electioneering period. It has been slowed down, as is the case with many other places, but specifically for that area, she says even up to today, even after the swearing in of the president and his deputy, it's still a bit slow. It's a market day, but we're not seeing as many people as they would have hoped, or as they're used to on normal days when we don't have the influence of electioneering and politics. So I come back to my panel here, and I was coming now to you, Tony, and we're talking about aspect of interest rates and with some bias towards the creative industry.
Okay. Now, the issue with the interest rate cap is that banks are not able to price the risk of people, especially in SMEs. So what banks do is you spread your risk by lending more people, and then your risk is spread so you don't suffer heavy damages in case of defaults. So when the interest rate cap is placed at 14%, so they cannot price individually according to what your credit worthiness is. So instead of them lending out to the public, they lend out to government, because government is buying at around above 18%. When people like Alex will want it at 14% that is capped. So any businessman will go with government. So one of the main things that I would advise the Jubilee government 5 years going forward, the main agenda should be repealing that interest rate cap. Because when you talk about liquidity problems, even the interest rate cap comes in, because it holds the movement of money quickly. So people make value of money as the ripple effect. So one of the main things that government needs to do, Jubilee government, using their tyranny in Parliament, is to repeal that interest cap, because the economy will still be held back with that cap.
All right. I'm told that Bernard Ojwang's signal is stable again. We can cross over to Rongo Market, where we shall get some of the views as we had begun to get Ojwang.
technical hitch. Okay, we are, as I told you there before, we are live in Rongo Market. We were trying to interact with business community here just to get their views on how politics has really affected them for the past 5 years. Right now, we are joined by one of the business women here. Just tell us how has politics affected them. Could you just please tell us what's your name and tell us how business has affected you?
I'm Jack Natamo from Rongo. Business has really been affected. You can see the market is not as packed as it is always. The things prices have hiked, and we are not even getting new stock because whatever we had sold, we had spent. So we don't have new stock. So we are trying to double the prices so that we can get the capital again to go and get new stuff. And we don't even have the customers are not coming as they used to, and so it is so hectic here, and everything is just not easy for us.
Uhuru Kenyatta was yesterday sworn, and he commenced his second and last term as the president of this country. Maybe what do you expect from his term?
We really expect much from him. First, we expect him to reconcile the country. And us as people in Rongo, we are really scared of whatever he's going to do and how he's going to react. Because in the past, we've seen our people being killed. We've seen our policemen really harassing us. So we really don't know what to expect. But we really pray very hard so that he may reconcile the country. He may win our trust again. Because we are human beings, we are able to be won if he does good things for us, or if he reconciles the country. That is the much we expect from him.
Okay, I'm also going to talk to one woman here just to tell us, pengine kwa majina waitwa nani, utueleze siasa imeathiri biashara namna gani?
Nyinga Cyprus Atieno. Jina yangu ni Cyprus Atieno. Kutoka Rongo hapa market. Biashara iko mbaya. Uhuru aende, awache nini, serikali iko naua watu bure. Sisi wanaumia. Watu wa Rongo wanataka ukweli. Mbona ananyang'anya Raila dini yake?
Sasa we are also for the final one to tell us biashara imeharibika namna gani?
Because of problem campaign. The problem that now we are facing in our country, young children are being killed for nothing. So the only thing that we are asking Uhuru to do, let them reconcile so that we can have a better country. Because now we are in a big problem. There's no money in the market. We are just here. We are eating from hand to mouth because there's no money.
So thank you very much. I'm going to talk to one of them here. Just tell us how has the politics affected business here, and what is the expectation for the next 5 years?
Politics has affected us, and more so mismanagement of the country. For one, only 15% comes to the counties, and 85% is swallowed using very bad ways of management, especially using the police to manage. Since Uhuru took over, it has been a police state.
What is your expectation as a businessman in the next 5 years?
My expectation, so long as Uhuru is in the government, is the president, we don't expect much because he has ruined our business. Taxation has gone high. Everything is high, and even the businessmen, even the people who are now selling the clothes, the tax here is not comparable to what they get per day. So we must go down.
So, thank you very much. Those were some of the views of the Rongo business community. They are saying that it is high time for both opposition and the government to sit down and solve the current political standstill, which is currently witnessed in the country, so as to make sure the economy of the country be where it was there before. Back to you, Dan.
Thank you very much, Bernard Ojwang, and we could see different sentiments and people feeling that the business there in Rongo is not as they would have hoped it to be. And one of the other sectors, that's business in general, that's at least the market, because that's Rongo market. But another sector that has been affected is that of tourism, which is one of the key pillars on which the Kenyan economy sits, earning the country billions in revenue. But in the last few years, the industry has suffered major setbacks in terms of dwindling tourist numbers due to security concerns. Since 2013, terror group Al al-Shabaab has carried out frequent attacks along the coastal towns of Mombasa, Malindi, Lamu and Kwale, driving away tourists and puncturing the sector in totality to a point of near collapse. Now, although the government assured investors and visitors of the security, more and more attacks were witnessed almost on a weekly basis, and most foreign industry players were forced to sell off their premises as tourists rerouted to Tanzania and other destinations. The government, through the Ministry of Tourism and Trade, then led by Cabinet Secretary Phyllis Kandia, in an effort to revitalize the sector, introduced the Kenya Tourism Board KTB Tembea Kenya initiative that was supposed to repackage and market the tourism commodity, but along the way it was faced with cash constraints that injured the operations. President Uhuru Kenyatta, on the other hand, also tried to waive landing fees for charter planes and also lower the park entry fees, but still the industry fortunes remained to be bleak as more and more hotels were shut or investors relocated to neighboring Tanzania and Malawi. However, with the swearing in of President Kenyatta for the second term, some tourism players are confident that the government will put more effort in the revival of the sector. Here's some views from the industry players in Malindi.
Waona ni kwamba sahihi utalii umekwisha, na mtu yote anayetaka kuadhibu Kenya ni auwe utalii. Akiua utalii ni sawasawa na Central Province kumaliza sekta ya kahawa. Hoteli ambayo iko na capacity ya wageni 100, ukifika pale kuna wageni 3 peke yake. Na ukiongalia vile ni kwamba wafanyikazi wamekuwa laid off, na wale waliobakia inabidi wafanye kazi wiki moja aende nyumbani. Mwenzake naye aingie kazini wiki moja aende nyumbani. Na hizi hoteli karibu zote zinaoperate namna hiyo.
Upande wa utalii imeenda chini kabisa kwa sababu ya security. Ilikuwa security mbeleni. Kwa 2013, 2014 hapo ndio kulikuwa na shida ya security. Lakini baadaye walipo 2015 kukaenda juu kidogo. Kukaenda juu, alafu 2016 ikiishaisha siasa ikaanza, wageni wanaokopa siasa. Wageni wakaona kwamba wakiona mambo kama haya, kama hii ya leo sasa vile wanapigana teakas nini, wageni hawezi. Hata hawa wenye wako hapa wawili wameanza kuwakopa tayari. Wakiona mambo ya fracture mambo ya kukimbizana hawataki. So ombi langu kwa Uhuru Kenyatta na serikali yake ni kwamba waichunge hii sekta ya utalii kabisa, waiweke iwe thabiti kwa upande wa security. Manake baada ya kupata Balala ana ujuzi, kumekuwa na mabadiliko. Kwa mwaka moja na kitu kumekuwa na change kwa upande wa Balala, amelete mpaka saizi kuna watalii wanakuja. Hapa Malindi ndio iko chini kwa area yote ya coast kwa utalii.
So that's a tourism conversation coming from Malindi, which is a key area, and like we said earlier on, we've seen efforts being put to try and bring back tourism there. Even as tourism begins to pick up, we've seen a lot of effort from the government to try and make sure that tourism gets back on its feet because of how much it invests or brings into the economy. And we'll keep on that conversation in the county of Nakuru, where once again Bridget Ngana joins us, and this time not speaking about agriculture but speaking about the hospitality sector, which is part of the tourism industry. Bridget.
Yes, Dan, and today I've learned a new vocabulary. It's called the hockey stick kind of graph, and that's how those investing in Nakuru County expect the economy to pick up. A hockey stick, it's like a tick in a sense. So how real is this? And right now, in terms of tourism, Nakuru County boasts of having a wide variety of hotels, ranging from 5-star, 4-star, and even 2-star hotels. And Naivasha is one of the tourism hubs of this county. But also Nakuru, despite it having the Lake Nakuru National Park, has a variety of hotels. And today we are in one of those institutions, a hospital institution, and it is a new establishment here in Nakuru County. And we're going to be joined by the general manager here, who is going to tell us basically how business has been during this political period and what do they expect, and in terms of how they project the bookings as we head even into the holiday season. You know that during the holiday season, Mombasa boasts of being the main tourist attraction, or most people head south, and we would want people to also head back within the other sides of the country. So David, thank you so so much for having time with us. Just tell us, how was business affected during this prolonged political period, and how do you expect it to pick up now that we have the President Sode?
Thank you, Ngani. Business, especially in the hospitality industry, right here in Nakuru, has been affected because of the prolonged electioneering period. It has been a long period, because since the beginning of this year, the only business that was solid is if it was touching on politics. But we are grateful because it has come to an end since the inauguration of the president yesterday. We have started getting new bookings, and one of the things that really affected us is the consistency. You could not get a long-term booking. You could not know what will be coming maybe in the next 1 or 2 months. But like yesterday, we got one international booking that was for a long time. It's an yearly booking, and that shows a lot of confidence with our clients. In hospitality, especially in Nakuru, we deal in 3 things: accommodation, conference, and meals. Conference is the key or the backbone of the hospitality industry in this region. And it was affected because most of the people would not like to travel. Most of the people would not like to plan for long. So, and you cannot organize a meeting in a day. So when you're not very sure when the meeting will hold, it becomes a challenge. But right now we are happy because we have started getting some bookings that land all the way to March. I have a booking of March next year. That is a very good sign. We know that hospitality in Nakuru, especially all the way from Naivasha, Nakuru town, and towards Molo, is growing tremendously. And I know, as much as we have been affected by the politics, we know that surely in the next 2-3 years, Nakuru will be a county and a town to look at. Why? Because not long ago, Nakuru was elevated into a city status. It's just waiting the procedure and all the paperwork. It will soon become a city. And when you are a city, there are some goodies and benefits that comes along with that status. And when Nakuru becomes a city, and since it's an artery to so many other towns, we believe that we'll get more business in hospitality. We'll get more investors to come invest in Nakuru, especially in hospitality. And a lot of people will have confidence in us. We'll get to what we call in hospitality the town one. Yes. The town one. Yes. For those who attend meetings and conferences, they know what we mean by town one.
Maybe let me interrupt you a little bit, David. Tell us, in terms of you being affected, did we see you or in this sector suffering to the extent that people are being laid off? Maybe, for example, with your staff here, did you have to maybe tell some people to be casuals before maybe having permanent employees? How were you really affected, and how is this also going to improve going forward? Are we seeing you expanding or maybe employing more people? Because, employment has also been affected during this time. There have been massive job cuts in every sector, the hospitality sector notwithstanding.
I know it has been a challenge also, but in my case here at the Oleken Hotel, I didn't have to lay off people. Yes, I was forced in 1 or 2 instances to advise some people to go on leave, those whose leaves were due, but I didn't cut off. But this time, we are growing. Like here, we are doing another unit, almost similar to this. So in the next like two years, we'll be having another unit almost this particular size. So we know that coming with this now cool climatic political condition, we'll have more people employed in the hospitality industry, including our place here, because I have to almost double the workforce in the next few years.
So maybe going forward, what do you think this county has to do? Well, you've mentioned the elevation to a city status. That is not going to happen overnight. It is a process. But how do we make Nakuru like the Mombasa of the Central Rift region? Because you've mentioned that we only thrive with conferences and maybe meetings. How would we now also make our tourist attraction worthwhile so that you do not bank on these conferences as being your mainstay?
I think we need, what I would advise especially the county government of Nakuru to do is to promote Nakuru. Promote Nakuru, get the best thing and the strong points of Nakuru. It's like doing a SWOT analysis of the strength and the weakness of this particular county, because Nakuru is a cosmopolitan county. Everybody who comes to Nakuru, they settle here. Some of the people who are around here, they were not coming to settle. But the moment they arrive here for work, they always find themselves here. So we need to promote Nakuru. We need to market it. Just the way Kenya is being marketed abroad, we need to market Nakuru. As much as we are one country, we need to sort of be selfish kidogo and market Nakuru as a unit. Look at the good things, the agriculture, all the way from Molo to Bahati to Naivasha, Subukia. We need to promote the agriculture. We have something that we call the agro-tourism, or the ecotourism. People will come here to see how we are doing agriculture. Look at the plowing competition, the international plowing competition happening in Egerton today. It is in Nakuru, but how many people know that it is around here? So we need to propel this county above others. We need to know that there are other 46 counties that are competing for the resources and also for investors. So we need to place ourselves very well.
Thank you so much. So, Dan, that's just a feel of how things are here in Nakuru County. It was a hotspot county that people expected there would be violence during both elections, but fortunately enough, Nakuru maintained calm and peace, and this, in a sense, also injected some confidence in some of the investors, specifically here at the Oleken Hotel. They're saying they're expanding. There is a sense of optimism after the president was sworn in yesterday, and how we're going to see that manifest in how these businesses are going to maybe pick up and maybe reach their targets is a matter of time, and this is something that maybe time will actually tell. And they do hope that Nakuru will be marketed properly. They say this is a sleeping giant, and in terms of agriculture being the biggest selling point for this county, that should be what should be harnessed mostly for everyone investing here in Nakuru County. Dan.
Thank you very much, Bridget. You've been excellent. Thank you for bringing us both the aspect of agriculture and tourism, and gives us, again, further for our conversation before we bring it to a close. But before we get into that, we want to cross over to the University of Nairobi, where there's the tax summit, which is being hosted by the Kenya Revenue Authority, and Hudhaifa Eden is there to give us a brief of what has been happening and what has come up from there. Hudhaifa.
University of Nairobi's Chandaria Auditorium, where the third annual tax summit is happening. It, of course, has started this morning and will continue for the next 2 days. It's expected to end on Friday. There was a number of panel discussions this morning, but the main session is expected in the afternoon, where the Cabinet Secretary in the National Treasury, Henry Rotich, is expected to give the opening remarks. There would be a keynote of course, a remark by the former finance minister in Ghana, Mr. Seth Teka. There are a number of stakeholders from both the private and public sector, academia, the youth and informal sector.
We once again apologize for that technical hitch. Shall be joining Hudhaifa once again, once we get him back, to just give us more information on the tax summit and what has been happening there. And we want to just bring back the conversation and just go now to tourism as we continue our conversation here. Now I'll come to you, Churchill. We've seen tourism, those in the sector are pretty happy that things are calming down, and now it seems that you know, Kenya is set to pick up in terms of tourism. We've seen the minister, the CS, being very, you know, agile in terms of trying to make sure that he can push the agenda. What promise holds in our tourism sector after now the electioneering is over?
As I start this to answer you, I'll say that tourism is quite cyclical sector, based on how, if you look at it from the foreign visitors who are coming to Kenya, they come during the peak seasons. I mean, it's not all over the 12 months period. So to an extent, right now that the jittery that was there, the political jittery that was there, that could have hampered the onboarding of foreign investors, right now has eased a bit. So I think now going forward within even the conferences, I mean, there were some global conferences that were meant to be held this year. Some of them were cancelled, some of them were pushed to next year. So I think now the prospects will be quite promising going forward, at least with the foreign foreign visitors aspect here. Also, another thing is now looking at the domestic visitors. And something that the counties, which should be spearheaded from the county level, we are looking at now counties should come up and now be able to boost their tourist attractions within the counties. So it's now the aspect for the marketing should now be elevated, should now be promoted from the county level to push this tourism agenda over and above the efforts that has been put by the tourism sector, ministry rather.
Right. And even as we continue, I'd just like to invite Reina Katsika, who's joined us. She's an entrepreneur, like I'd promised we'd have another entrepreneur. Alex has been giving us his story. And just to rope her into the conversation, maybe you could just give us a gist of how your business, what your business is about, and how the electioneering period has affected it, if at all, and what you feel going forward it holds.
Hello everyone. I'm so delighted to be here. My name is Reina Munyalo Hatsika and I'm an entrepreneur. I'm 29 years old. I run my own business called Reality Connection Limited. We deal with events management and organization for different companies, organizations, and also individuals. So for this election year period, it has been very tight also from our side because you find many functions, many events. Many companies cancelled their yearly calendar events of the year because of the election period. So you find the flip side of it, it really affected us. So the business was not like the other previous years, or the business was not as usual. Yes.
So is it that you just didn't have people asking for events, or is that you had people who had asked and cancelled, or both?
What happened for this election year period, you find there were clients whom they had already given us business, like we are going to have this particular function maybe in August or in July, in May. But you find they called and cancelled and said because of election we have to cancel because we don't know the turnout, we don't know how things will come. There was that uncertainty. So you find many, not only one, many cancelled.
All right. And going forward, what do you hope, now that our electioneering period is pretty much behind us, now that the president has been inaugurated, for your business, are you seeing prospects of things coming back, or do your clients still sound like they're not certain?
What I can say right now, there is hope. And as a young entrepreneur and also as a young politician, because I vied for MCA Kiambu Township Ward, and you find there was that uncertainty also in terms of peace and also business investors. So I would like to I mostly urge our government and maybe the other side, the opposition, if the two can be able to work together so that the country can be able to settle and also the businesses can run as usual. So I feel also on my side as a young entrepreneur and also as a young politician, there is hope for this country.
So do you feel for your business that things are looking up, now that we are...
Yes. Things are... There's some light.
Okay.
There's some light that things will start running as usual, or maybe as normal.
All right. And so we were looking at different sectors in the economy, and now we're on the tourism part. And we've had the people from Malindi speaking their part, and we've had the hospitality, the manager at the hotel in Nakuru, and we see people have got a lot of hope, just like what she's saying. And tourism is a big deal for us, but we're still seeing there may be some uncertainty, even politically, in terms of a lot. But it seems like there's the push to just let's move on. Maybe I bring you in, Tony. How then should we? What's the balance, even for the sake of perception for Kenya, so that we can keep our businesses going, and like what she's saying, that the hope can be kept alive?
Tourism sector is quite different from the other sectors because it mainly depends on the investor confidence in your country, the visitors, tourism confidence. So when we have a heated political temperatures that we are having, despite the political cycle coming down, we still have the temperature still flying high. It still creates an uncertainty in that sector because we've seen the parts of Western that there are travel advisories that were given last week. So unless the two coalition sides come to an agreement, if not, we still face an uncertainty in the tourism sector. It's the solution to the tourism sector to boost confidence, moves to the doorstep of having a political settlement, that people can in agreement that we need to move forward. But we have half of the country that is not moving forward when the half wants to move forward, creates a destabilizing situation that is not good for the tourism sector. So the door steps at the Uhuru, especially the President Uhuru, who needs to reach out to the opposition.
All right, and maybe Alex, I know, do you have any, for your business as a photographer and being that space, do you find any kind of value in terms of tourism growing? Does it create opportunities for you, or have you experienced it so far? Because if tourism stabilizes, then you stand to gain.
Well, definitely, tourism does affect our business, and I speak for the larger photography community. I think about a year ago, there was quite some noise on Twitter when the Kenya Tourist Board engaged a few foreign influencers to kind of push their agenda, and the work they were doing was getting posted on their Twitter handle. But I think for the creatives, the quality of work that was, representing Kenya was not up to standard in terms of the local standards of some of the work we've seen from people locally. And I remember that, if the photographers went up in arms, and even the just local community went up in arms and said, hey, listen, our own government needs to, put back money into professionals to actually document the country for them, which was quite something. But having said that, tourism does affect us because some of our clients are not local. They are contracts that we have a lot of people coming from the outside to not even just for tourism, but for business. Kenya is also a very picturesque country, and we're talking about Masai Mara, and we're talking about landscapes and the Rift Valley and all these attractions, and those actually open opportunities for us to work in collaborations with media companies abroad.
Right.
So it does affect us. The state of the nation does affect our business directly.
Right. Reina, for you as an event planner, tourism impact on you, any? And if so, what are the prospects when it comes to, if tourism was to improve, what does it portend for you?
You see, on my side as an event planner, you find there are other events that we usually have that are international. And you find there are also exhibitions which are international. So you find, like, I'll give you a case example, like September we were to have a certain international event which has been cancelled twice this year. And now it has been pushed to January. So you find also as these exhibitors, they are coming to showcase whatever their companies do outside there. It is also an addition to our tourism sector, because at the end of it all, they will be able to tour our country. At the same time, they're bringing foreign investment in the country. So you see, it is really a bad, how can I say? It is really a ripple effect when such are cancelled. So that is why I'm really urging now that our President, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, and the deputy they've been sworn in, to really make sure that the government and his government are able to, we are able to, how can I say, to recoup the time that
has been lost in
the
electioneering period.
Yeah, in the electioneering period.
All right. And for you, we had earlier spoken with Alex about financing of businesses, which is one of the biggest issues for SMEs when it comes to financing. And we're talking about the issue of interest rate caps. For your business, have you had challenges when it comes to getting finance credit from banks? Because, the rate caps, they've become more reluctant to lend to SMEs.
Yeah, I'll speak from my experience. Right now, my business is 4 years old. And I've had problems just like any other young entrepreneur and SMEs in terms of finance. I remember on my second year period, I needed finance because I got a project that I needed money immediately. But I approached my bank that I was banking with, and they told me, like, for now, we cannot be able to give you money. And I told them, why? Because I've been banking with you guys. Then they said, you see, for us people in events, you might be paid this month for the function that you're doing next month. Then the other month, maybe your accounts are not all that good. But you might find maybe you've deposited $1 million, the other month you don't have anything, the other month you have 500, the other month, and the other month maybe you don't have anything. But you see, the bank doesn't want to understand you're an SME or you're a young entrepreneur. They just want to see money, 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 money. And you find for young entrepreneurs, it's really hard. And for me at that time when I needed money, I had to look for an alternative, of which it was really, really, really a bitter experience, because where I outsourced funds, their interest rates were crazy. I think it was like 22% or 23%. But yes, they solved my problem. They gave me money immediately within 1 week. Those people, there are other alternative measures, and this is why I applaud Kenyans. They take opportunity on everything. Yeah, so there are other people, they lend you money in a quick manner, but now their interest is very high. So if the bank is not able to do it, they come in to fill the space. And that is how we are Kenyans. So for young entrepreneurs, it's tough for us.
And you see, now you talked about that was your second year. That was before the interest rate cap came into effect.
Yes.
What about now? Now that has come into effect, how has your experience been when in terms of trying to get funding? Alone, if you have gone, that is, to bank.
In terms of trying to get funding, since for my third and fourth year, even right now, I've really tried to minimize on my borrowing rates, because for this year, the electioneering period, I didn't want to get into borrowing. Then later on, it comes and affects us business-wise and financial-wise. So for this year, I really tried to stay away from borrowing.
Borrowing?
Yeah,
Oh,
because the trend was you are not seeing the income that is coming in.
All right, you must be doing well.
And at the same time, I had put some of my money into campaign since I was vying.
You must be doing well.
Since I was vying. Yeah.
And how many people have you employed?
I have five employees. Yeah.
Okay.
But it was tough because, you see, even if it's an electioneering period and there's no income that is coming, you as an employer, you still have to pay salaries. You still have to pay. Your landlord doesn't care. And I actually have an experience. There was a time the business didn't have money, and I was not able even to pay my office. And it is a bitter experience. My landlord took my office items. So this is an experience that I also talk to other young entrepreneurs, that sometimes it's not all that cozy, sometimes it's not all that juicy, because there are people in the business, they don't really care, and they just show their wolf side. So I remember that time the business didn't have money, and I told my office, the landlord for my office, and my landlord actually took all, she forgeared all my office items, furniture, my printer, my laptops. And the money was very little compared to what she took. But I had to give myself strength again, and I said I will not give up. I'll not give up. No matter, even if they have taken all my things, I will still work hard and repay and continue with the business.
All right. Yeah. Good for you. We appreciate your resilience.
Yeah.
But the question is to her is, have you managed to break it?
Until now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right. So I think time is not on our side. So I just like us to have our final comments as we go around. I'll begin with Churchill on what do you feel, we're bringing it home now. We've touched on a number of sectors, a number of areas. Going forward, we've said that the future is bright in terms of the business scene, the economic scene. It's largely bright. What needs to be done, and what are your final thoughts on our conversation? Briefly.
Top of my list, I think job employment should be key in the second term for Uhuru Kenyatta, because it's one of those things that it boils down to the economic growth. If there are not many people into the either informal or the formal sector, I mean, we can't get the kind of economic growth that is being envisaged by the government. Another thing is what actually has been put in place is now the manufacturing sector at least has been identified. Key emphasis should be on it, the special economic zones. I mean, there are some areas that had been identified. So I think we could get some roll-up of the industries into the manufacturing sector. It would be quite ideal to propel the economy. Another thing that I see in my view has been raised by the entrepreneurs is this aspect of the financing, the interest rate capping. Now with the election period over and with the inauguration, I think now the next step forward is now the legislation, the kind of legislation that we will like to see implemented. First of all, we see that the 4 months between July and October, there's been a slow disbursement of funds to the county governments. County governments actually have been relying from the national government to an extent of 85% of their revenues. That should make it plausible for the county governments now to start improving their internal revenue measures. And also it brings the point about the interest rate capping. In my view, I think, I mean, to benefit even the common mwananchi, I think now rather than the complete repeal of the law, it could be a review of it. Perhaps they could now be able to loosen the deposit, the 70% deposit condition, so that at least banks will have some spreads. They can cap it at the lending at 14%, or depending on where the CBR rate is, but now loosen the deposit conditionality, so that even banks themselves, they can have some headrooms.
So to increase the interest rate, the rate spread. The
spread, yeah.
Okay.
Or rather, they could look at the segment of the broader lending, the sectors, and then rather than have the blanket rate into the whole segment, they could just narrow it down to a few segments, so at least to propel the growth.
All right, thank you very much. Alex?
Well, let me just say that the capping was a good thing for the local businessman. So I know some of the proposals by the economists and the experts says, let's review that. I like the way he said it though, through segmentation. However, the capping was actually good. As much as credit has been a bit tougher to access, it was a good thing, because I think there's a real need for the banks to be kind of monitored or to be managed.
Reined in.
Yes. Now, having said that, in conclusion, for me, one, for the creative sector, I'll say we'd like to hear with the new budget announcements coming soon, in the coming year, we'd like some, what do you call it? Incentives for industries, especially the arts industries. We like to see more from the Ministry of Sports and Culture.
Arts and Culture.
Yeah, we need to see a bit more done towards for us. Actually, at times it's not felt. The sports is quite strong, but for arts, I think they can do better. And regarding the state of the nation, in regards to business, I think there's a philosophy that there are 7 spheres that influence a nation. One of them being politics. There is finance, there is arts, there is science, there is communication. There are other sectors that exist too. So I think a country should not stall because of its political state. I think we can, we as a people might need to rise up and just be a bit more mature, so that when politics and elections are going on, we don't have to come to a standstill, as in life can go on.
Life goes on at the same time.
There are countries where they have that kind of culture. They go, vote and go back to work. But for us, it becomes a bit of a, let's watch what's going on. I think we can rise up and be better. My appeal perhaps will be to the media. We can begin to change the narrative right now, right? I know our screens are always bombarded with a lot of politics. And at times it can be a bit overwhelming on the people. As much as politics is the men's soap opera, I think we can shift the dialogue and switch the modes.
Right.
And I think that will influence the people for the better.
All right, Tony, very briefly, we are out of time.
Okay. Mine first is for the interest rate cap. It was a populist experiment that is not working, and it's not working, and it's for the Uhuru government and in legacy, they need to repeal it, because the economy will still be held back, unlike what Alex is saying. Second is we need to do physical consolidation, which I think Uhuru had mentioned, the president had mentioned yesterday, because there is no beauty in having a budget that we can't fund ourselves. So we need to reduce some things, and then we see how we can move forward. And then the third is that we can't have a country where half of the people are moving on and half are not moving on. So we need to find a way that we move in the right direction.
All right, thank you very much. And Draina, I know you've not been here, but at least you've given us a good part of your story, and we've gotten to feel your presence. Maybe you can give us your final thoughts on the way for what you feel the way forward would be, and your expectations and aspirations when it comes to business in Kenya.
Okay, on my side, what I feel the way forward, and I would like to speak to the youth, because I represent the youth, and this is my thought, especially to the youth. Let us not waste our time a lot during the electioneering period, going to throw stones somewhere, That is your youth time, and it will not come back. So as the youth, I would like to speak to the youth of this country. Let us not waste our time I would just like to call it the way it is, in some manners that will not be able to help you. So to the youth of this country and the young people who are in business, it's not easy, but just stick in there. It is going to pay later on. You might fall, but no matter how many times you fall, just rise up again. And one more thing, and also to the county government and the government of Uhuru and the government of His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta. Let us continue to give our youth space. Those who are in business, let them get those, if it is tenders, the businesses, and when they get those tender businesses, please, the county government and also the ministries, make sure you pay these people, because at the same time, when a business person or a youth use their money to do the business for you and you don't pay them, it is very hard for their businesses to grow. And you know, at the same time, they have expenses that they need to pay. So at the end of it all, if you don't pay, you are not nurturing and you're not developing the youth of this country, and you're not developing the businesses. So as you are giving the businesses and the platform to the youth, also make sure it is your how can I say, it is your responsibility to make sure that these youth are paid, and they're paid on time.
Thank you very much, Tony Watima, Rena Hatsika. Yes. I like the ha.
Thank you. It's from Western.
Yes, we could tell. Either Western or France. Can't be one of those. Alex Maina and Chachi Logutu, thank you for speaking to us. It's been good insight. We are still here on NTV Today. We shall be back after the break, and after the break we shall look at how what's happening at the Nairobi Securities Exchange, being KQ having listed more shares, as well as how the markets are reacting to the new dispensation order that the President and his deputy have been sworn in, as well as one of the pronouncements the President made was about the manufacturing sector in terms of the tariffs, in terms of power tariffs being cut for those who will be doing it operation between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. And we shall be speaking to the CEO of the Association of Manufacturers to just give some light into how they've welcomed or not this announcement by the President. Be with us. I will be back after this break. what next when it comes to the economy that is, and considering the president and his deputy have been sworn in, now we look at what the expectations are of different people, especially in the business community. And we've looked at different sectors. We've had live links from Mombasa talking about export and import. We've talked about the tourism sector from Malindi as well as Nakuru. We've looked at general business of the market in Rongo and many other places. And now we cross over to Marsabit. In the business community in the county of Marsabit, accounting losses due to political pressures they have been subjected to by the prolonged electoral process for the better part of 2017. They have blamed their business losses largely on politics. Let's now hear from Safi Godana in Marsabit.
The last few months have been tough for the business community in this county of Marsabit, and many have blamed their losses on the prolonged political uncertainty in the country.
Hii kazi nimefanya kama 5 years, biashara tulikuwa tunafanya. Lakini for the last 5 years tulikuwa sawa. Although wakati ya hii election biashara imerudi kabisa chini. Kabisa kuna ni election tu imefanya hii campaign hizi vitu.
Miaka 5 nimeisha, biashara yangu ilikuwa inaendelea poa. Lakini hii wakati hii election biashara yangu imeenda chini sana.
Hatupati ile kiwango ambao tunapata kwa kila siku. Natumaini saa hizi kwa vile Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta ameapishwa kuwa president wa Kenya, tuna hope na kuomba Mwenyezi Mungu biashara yetu itamudu na itaenda juu.
Lakini hatujui vile itakuwa. Juu umesikia watu wanaanza vile wamesema tena bado wanaendelea. So kuna mvutano bado, hatujui vile itakuwa.
Mambo yarudi kawaida kama mbeleni.
With the new government in place, they are hoping to shelve their political fears under their carpets and focus on how to gain as much as they can before next general election. Safi Godana Mamo, NTV, in the county of Marsabit.
Kenya Airways has listed 5.3 billion shares at the Nairobi Securities Exchange following the completion of the company's debt and equity restructuring. Under the restructuring, the government's stake will increase to 48.9% from 29.8%. KQ lenders will own 38.1%, while the KLM Royal Dutch Airline will hold 7.8%. The employees will hold 2.4% under a share ownership scheme. KQ says the restructuring will make the airline competitive again and demonstrates a step towards securing the airline's growth in the future. And that has been happening this morning, and Alex Mwangi is there and shall be joining us with a live interview in a bit with the CEO of the NSC to give us an idea of, one, what has happened today, as well as how the markets have reacted to the inauguration of the president now that we are beyond that and the electioneering period is largely behind us. But before we get there, the president yesterday made an announcement, and he said that manufacturers are some of the beneficiaries of one of his first directives as president in his new term, and this is cutting the power costs to 50% for those that shall be operating. Manufacturers shall operate between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. And besides that, he said he's really trying to boost manufacturing because it's going to be one of the key areas where job creation is expected to be made to happen. And now I'm joined by Phyllis Wakiaga, the CEO of the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, to delve deeper into this. First and foremost, thank you for joining us.
You're very welcome.
So, your first reaction to the announcement by the president on the same?
First of all, the president's announcement for me is the government's realization that the manufacturing sector is really the backbone of the engine of any economy. If you look at the economies that have been able to transform and become inclusive and really grow their economies, they have done it against the background of a strong manufacturing sector. So I think the president's announcement, in my view, is really a culmination of the work we've been doing in trying to say that as a country, we need to turn our focus to the manufacturing sector. In the run-up to the election, we actually prepared as the association a 10-point agenda highlighting the fact that it's important that we focus on this sector because of its ability to create jobs in the country, because of its forward and backward linkages that it can create, and the fact that it really does create productive and sustainable jobs. So for me, the recognition of the same in the president's speech is really quite important for the sector.
Okay, and is this a new thing, first and foremost, for the manufacturers in terms of operating? Because the thinking would be for those who may not be as conversant with the operations in the manufacturing sector would feel that this should be now an incentive for now manufacturers to now extend their operations. Is this a new thing, or is it just, it's been existent, just that it's a new cost?
I think you're speaking about the time of use tariff.
Yes.
The proposal to have lower tariffs at night between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. in the morning. There have been conversations over the last years with the Energy Regulatory Commission on looking at how we can have lower tariffs. And one of the things was that at night, you notice that the usage of power drops significantly when people go to sleep. And we shed off a lot of that power, which we still have to pay for. So the conversation has been around how we can get manufacturers to operate at night with lower tariffs. So this is actually a conclusion of that, and looking at how we can have more manufacturing sector players operate 24 hours and utilize a lower tariff at night. I think that would be one of the steps towards competitiveness and ensuring that we have the cost of doing business lowered in the country. So we are keen to look at the detail of it because we are waiting for the final way forward from ERC on how it will be implemented. Because there are people who are already at 100% capacity utilization. How do we get them on board to utilize and benefit from this time of use tariff? But in the long run, we are hopeful that that tariff can become an industrial tariff so that industry in its totality is competitive 24 hours a day.
Right. So yes. Are you saying that you're looking forward to the cost of power being cut down even for during the day?
In the long run, yes. That would be the right direction to go as we look at growing the sector. If you listen to the President's speech, he did speak about focusing on some of the priority sectors. This include definitely the textile sector, the leather sector, agro-processing, issues of mining, building, mining and construction sectors. And all those sectors do utilize power. The level of utilization differs across the sectors, but the bottom line is that everyone utilizes power. So that's one of the costs of production that we need to look at. But in addition to that, continually looking at the issues around predictability in the regulatory environment, because that has an impact on the cost of doing business. The issue of cash flow and how money flows, we've seen the hit that the manufacturing sector has taken due to the delayed payments from the retail sector and county governments. So how do we ensure that money is flowing within the sector? And also uptake of those goods once they're produced. Can they be taken up by public procurement? The Buy Kenya, Build Kenya policy is one of the things I think that the President was able to champion in his first term. But the realization of it is going to happen as we move forward, as we see people actually adhere to the 40% of local content.
All right.
Yes.
And what, if you have a figure, percentage of manufacturers that are already operating 24 hours a day?
24 hours a day, when we speak to our members, a number of them do operate 24 hours a day. I won't give you an exact percentage. We met with ERC and the ministry on Monday, and we're actually trying to get the exact details of who operates 24 hours a day. That is also dependent on demand. I think you know that the last 1 year, the demand has been low due to a number of issues. And based on that, you might find that some people who are operating 24 hours are currently not. But we'll be able to give a better indicative figure of those who operate 24 hours.
Okay, and whenever we hear a cost in terms of a production cost being brought down,
yes,
our default trajectory is to lower cost of products. Are we then, after this directive, looking to see some products becoming cheaper?
I think let's look at it objectively first. As I said, we need to see the details of how it will be lowered. But in the long run, the reason you reduce the cost of doing business is to make products more competitive in the market, both the local and the regional market. The reason sometimes our products are not being bought in the market is because of our cost competitiveness, where you find our products are sold at a higher cost. So with incentives in totality that look at the cost of doing business, we will see the manufacturing sector become more competitive, both for local and regional and international trade. And so
I'm trying to get the context here,
yes,
trying to get good context.
Yes.
If you have your power costs cut for half your, if you're doing 24 hours for half your operation time,
yes,
it's cut by half. Mm-hmm. Do you have an estimate of about how much it would hit the cost of the shelf price?
It's dependent. There are certain sectors where the utilization of power is a key component, and for those sectors, depending on how much the cost actually comes down, we will see probably the cost competitiveness of the products going forward. So as I've said, it's important to sit and look at the detailed proposal on how the power cost will come down and factor it into the cost of production and see how we move forward. But really, I think this is an incentive that will see us become more competitive and more cost competitive as a sector.
Right. Yes. And many times when the government, in a number of cases rather, when the government comes up with directives or plans, one of the issues that come up from the private sector times is lack of dialogue, or rather being involved in the process.
Yes.
Have you been involved in the process of this, or is it one of those that you can accept? And
I think for ERC, the time of use tariff has been a conversation since I joined CAM 5 years ago. It's one of those things, the studies have been carried out, extensive conversations have been had on it. And last week, there was a meeting to present what the findings were of the report. And we had a meeting to give our feedback and input on the implementation. One of the areas we're concerned about is if it was only for additional demand, it would mean then that very few people would benefit from it unless they either invest in new industry or something. So we agreed to iron out some of those issues. So by and large, we have had conversations around the issue. And we are keen to see, I think sometimes some of these things we need to implement and move and improve them as we move along. Because you can also have analysis paralysis, where you analyze and nothing happens. So I'm happy that there has been a move and a declaration from the president that we move forward and implement, and we can learn the lessons and make it better as we move along.
Right. And at a point you mentioned about the challenge that you've had as manufacturers with late payments from the retail sector.
Yes.
I can see the passion you have behind that from the retail sector as well as from county governments.
Yes.
Has anything changed, especially from the county governments? Has anything changed, and what's the way forward?
I think for county governments, it's still a concern. We have just come out of the electioneering process, and money was not being released to the county governments. So the payments and the delays are still a concern. As a country, what we need to is to just develop a culture of paying on time. Because you see, it stems from the government, it's moved to private sector, you have retailers also not paying on time. So it's a culture we need to instill, that we pay people on time. And if you don't pay on time, there must be a penalty or consequence to it, so that business continues. We've seen SMEs actually shut down because of the delayed payments from county governments and the retail sector. For the retail sector, it's a more systemic issue that we need to address. We were able to carry out a study in partnership with the Retailers Association and the State Department of Trade under the Ministry of Industrialization. And we identified some of the underlying issues that are leading to the inability of retail sector to pay. So we've come up with a report, and we're looking at having regulations, because countries, this is something that has happened world over. We've looked at countries like the UK, Canada, where they have prompt payment regulations in place. So we're looking at having a retail sector where we have not just strict regulation, but co-regulation. We self-regulate ourselves. We'll have a code of conduct with retailers, but the government will need to come in the case that we are not able to adhere to those codes, because this is a serious issue that can have implications on the growth of the economy. So going forward, you're going to see us developing regulations, coming up with the codes of conduct, and I'm hopeful that by January, February, we can have this behind us so that we move on with the implementation.
The government has been talking about putting up a regulator.
Yes.
Is that part of the plan, or is that going to be, is that a different plan altogether?
No, it is part of the plan. It was one of the things that came out, because it was clear that we can try and regulate ourselves, but in certain businesses like this, one person has an upper hand because they have the shelf. And as brand owners or manufacturers, you want the shelf space. So because of that, we need a go-between who would be the regulator, and we'll be able to then provide data on areas where we are not getting paid on time, and have a co-regulatory framework, because we don't want to over-regulate business, but at the same time, if self-regulation doesn't work, we can have co-regulation where the government kicks in if we don't adhere to what we've set as regulations between ourselves and the sector.
Okay, just going back to the aspect of the 24-hour economy.
Yes.
Once this is implemented, which I believe should be immediately in terms of the tariffs,
yes,
do we foresee it then creating more jobs? If so, is there an estimate of how many jobs will be created?
Once a 24-hour economy is implemented, there's opportunity to increase demand. One of the things is there has to be somewhere these goods are being sold. So we have local demand. We encourage the government to take up products from local manufacturers which are locally available. We've provided, as the Association of Manufacturers, further to the Buy Kenya, Build Kenya policy, a list of everything made in Kenya. In some cases, 100% of those things can be bought in Kenya. So for us to increase demand would be critical. And then the ESC market and the African market is also another critical market for us. So if we can see initiatives by government taking up what is made in Kenya and us reaching out to really grow our markets, and the demand grows, the 24-hour economy will happen, because people will have orders. They'll be able to then take advantage of these tariffs and manufacture 24 hours a day. So I think it's a very positive move in terms of stimulating that demand. If people know that they can produce at lower costs, they can do it and then sell their products competitively.
So how many extra jobs are we looking at?
I can't give you a number for now, but what we've done in the 10-point agenda that we presented to government, there's the possibility of the manufacturing sector creating around 300,000 additional jobs within the sector. This can be done, you can create them annually depending on how fast we want to scale up, and if those incentives and conditions are put in place, you can actually create those jobs. We looked at things like value addition in tea. We're only value adding 2% of the tea locally. If we could increase that to even 10%, that's an opportunity to create jobs. You look at the rest of the agro-processing sector, there's an opportunity there. We have AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunities Act, with a lot of opportunities for us to export even to the US. We've only exploited, I think, 1 or 2% of that. If we looked at it and even went to 50%, then we can take advantage of these low tariffs, manufacture competitively and export those products. So it's a I think it's an initiative that will require the Ministry of Energy also working closely with the National Treasury and the Ministry of Industry and Trade.
All right. And one of the things that, first of all, manufacturing has always been known to be the potential area of, in terms of jobs, which is one of the most sensitive things. We're seeing unemployment rates of, what, 40% in the country.
Yes.
But one of the reasons why manufacturing has not grown as we wanted is because of it's not competitive. Locally produced goods are very expensive compared to what we'll import. So you'll find even things that we grow in Kenya, when I import, it's much, much cheaper. So in terms of trying to make sure that you can bridge this gap and actually have competitive prices, that you tell me this pen is made in Kenya, this one is made in China, but actually buy this one. And it's, how far are we in terms of bridging this gap from the manufacturer's end?
We are making steps towards it, but we need to make serious strides. If you look at our country, we are primarily an agro-based economy. So you're right that even the cost of produce, that's why we have to look all the way backwards in the value chain. How competitive are we when we produce at farm level? If you look at our agricultural sector, there are concerns about the low productivity at the agricultural level. If we need to grow the manufacturing sector and value addition, we first of all need to be productive at the agricultural sector. So the Ministry of Agriculture will be a key component in driving this agenda forward. Once we are productive in that area, we then look at the cost of transporting. So we've seen a lot of investments. I think we heard from the President's speech, the first term they did invest a lot on infrastructure. How far does it go into the counties? Have we ensured that goods are able to move out of the counties competitively? And then once they come into industry, look at the issue of labor productivity. And the cost of labor, because that's where sometimes countries like Bangladesh and China have an advantage over us. Our cost of labor is significantly higher. But why is it high? Because the cost of living is high. So we are constantly chasing and increasing wages because our people need to be able to have money to spend, which is understandable. So in order to fix this vicious cycle, we need to look at reducing the cost of commodities that people utilize on a day-to-day basis. The issue of housing, affordable housing, 500,000 houses have been promised by the government as they come in. So if we have affordable housing, the basic products are affordable, the cost of living goes down, and then you're able to pay a more competitive wage. Then skills within the industry. If we can improve skills and increase innovation and technology, we also improve productivity. So if all those things can happen in tandem, so it's a very complex space, but if all of those things can happen in tandem, we can see the sector becoming more competitive and goods being more affordable within the country. The other big thing is the issue of tax. As a manufacturing sector, we have had a lot of instances where we become the default for tax because we are visible, we've been registered, so taxes just keep being piled. So we speak a lot about...
You're a sitting duck.
Yes, we speak a lot about the widening of the tax base. SMEs is one of the agendas that the President did speak about. And the informal sector also, how do we incentivize these people to come into the tax bracket? That way the burden is spread wider and businesses are then not overburdened and uncompetitive in the process of taxation. So all those things put together, and another critical aspect is affordable finance. That is the game changer. If you read about South Korea and the countries who've been able to grow, they've done three things: increase productivity in agriculture, increase value addition, and made sure that there's affordable finance. So that's something we need to look at. Our competitors world over are borrowing at maybe 3%.
So are you as manufacturers pro interest rate cap or not?
As manufacturers, we are for interest rates that allow us to borrow at lower value. The interest rate cap, let's look at why it came into place. I think at that time what we were doing was to try and have SMEs have affordable finance. So for us to decide whether it was good or bad, have we achieved that? I think from the conversation we've seen, SMEs become high risk.
Yes.
So they've actually not been able to.
So basically, if it was up to you, we'd have the interest rate cap removed or revised.
If it was up to me, I would not have it removed. I would have it revised, because it's also evident that the banking sector did get to a point where interest rates were too high. So we need to encourage the banking sector to have responsible banking and see how to bring everyone on board without necessarily having to have a cap that then makes it makes it hard for them to lend to the SMEs who are trying to help in the first place. So I think there needs to be a balance and a discussion about how we can have responsible banking, we can have low interest rates, but at the same time ensure that the SMEs are getting this finance.
So what are the options in terms of if I wanted to revise this law and make it more, it sounds very politically correct, but what are the actual options that are there?
I think the options is, first of all, to look at what the end game is, because the end game is to have money available for SMEs. If the banking sector is not going to be able to do it, if you look at the Kenya Industrial Transformation Program, one of the proposals that has not been fully implemented yet is the establishment of an industrial development bank. Because in some cases, government might have to come in to make these finances available at affordable rates. So maybe we can look at the KITP and see if we can have that industrial development bank put in place.
Okay,
yes.
And there has always been a conversation about the disconnect between all these big plans,
yes,
and the actual
implementation.
Not really the price, for instance.
Yes.
No, we hear Kenya ease of doing business has gone up. All this, there's a lot of accolades we get, even
Yes.
internationally.
Yes.
And there's a lot of strides made in the bigger picture, but people may not see them when it comes to the shelf price, what I'm buying my bread and butter for. Those who can afford butter.
Yes.
You know, so where is that disconnect?
The disconnect, I think, is we have focused on, I know, like the ease of doing business. Kenya has achieved a lot of strides. We are now number 80 in the world. So it's easy for you to set up your business, to get your electricity connection, to get your company registered. But the issue we've not been able to tackle is cost competitiveness. That is still something that is an issue that must be addressed. If you look at the competitive index, that's an index we're not doing as well in. So maybe we need to focus our attention now on competitiveness. Because if we're going to turn Kenya into a manufacturing hub for Africa or reduce the cost of products on the shelf, it's important that we are competitive. So I do agree that there are a lot of strides and accolades. And the thing with these journeys is that they're continuous. You gain here and you keep improving as you move along. So for me, the focus going forward should really be on cost competitiveness. How competitive can we be so that we produce at the lowest cost possible?
Which goes back to what you're saying earlier,
Yes.
in terms of trying to make sure that you guys as manufacturers can actually produce.
Yes, at the lowest cost. And if we're producing at the lowest cost possible, that will be reflected on the shelf price. So and that's why it needs to be holistic. You look at energy logistics. So I think we need to have a serious conversation with the ministry or the implementers on what these aspects are and how we can bring them down. One of the other things is even the import of raw materials into the country. The common external tariff for the East African community is being reviewed. It's done every 5 years because industries develop along the way. So you'll find a certain raw material at 25%, which makes it uncompetitive. So we are trying to align all this so that raw materials are coming in as affordably as possible. So I think if we have our raw materials coming in, we have the main inputs that go into production like energy, water being looked at. And even at farm level, manufacturers are doing energy audits to identify where they're wasting energy. So we've seen through the work we've done with manufacturers, people trying to reduce their usage and cost of energy. So I think in totality, if we have the commitment from government to implement the policies, to give us a predictable business environment, which is critical, then we address the cash flow issues. We have access to finance, we have the right skills in place, which is the 10-point agenda we actually did give to government. We'll go a long way. Then the other thing is government expenditure, because wastage and corruption does have an impact on the cost of doing business. It can make it unnecessarily expensive to do business. So the issues of accountability going forward are going to be critical.
Which the president mentioned in his speech as well.
Yes, I saw that, about both the parliament holding the executive accountable and the role of the judiciary also in making all this come together.
All right, and just before I let you go, we just like an update of how, I mean, there was a lot of hue and cry when we were banning the plastic bags.
Yes.
There was a lot from your end.
Yes.
You almost pulled each other's hairs out with the ministry.
Yes.
How is it looking for you as manufacturers now? Because you're the ones who are really complaining, saying jobs will be lost. Have any jobs been lost? If so, how many? Have any been created? If so, how many? And how is it looking now that there's alternatives of what you can make?
The plastics ban was something that we did voice our concerns on, mainly because of how it was done. The consultation was not adequate, especially because it touched on industrial plastic. A lot of industries do use plastics for good reason. If they are, for example, selling hygroscopic products or products that require a lot of hygiene handling, like the pharmaceutical sector. So our concern was for the industrial plastic. There was a big disconnect in how that was being handled. So we did have a lot of conversations with the Ministry of with the Ministry of Environment and NEMA to try and bridge that gap. There are still areas that need further ironing out, and we'll keep engaging on this.
What is not sorted out?
We still have the issue of industrial plastics. We did have to apply to NEMA to get that approved, and the process is not as fast as we would like it to be. For especially our members in the counties, they want this issue handled much more expeditiously than it is being handled. And for industrial plastics, I think world over, the issue is mainly for carrier bags. But once you get into industrial plastics, it's a bit more complex. So our plea was that we allow industry to operate competitively. There's a reason people choose to package in plastic. And the end game is waste management. So as the Association of Manufacturers, even before this ban, we had put in place a proposal for improved waste management in the country. Because it's not only for plastics, it's for other waste. Right. So we need to be able to
Let me just cut you short
collect
there.
and recycle it.
I just wanted to know, have any jobs been lost?
Yes, jobs have been lost.
How
because I will not give you an exact number, but a number of manufacturing plants who are manufacturing carry bags and packaging have actually had to shut down because their businesses are no longer legal in Kenya. They are also exporting to partner states. So jobs have been lost in the plastic sector.
Have jobs been created?
Jobs may be created also if we go into recycling, because waste management is really about recycling. So jobs will be created in the long run.
So far none? Or I'm talking about as at now?
As at now, recycling, we've seen some recyclers who existed having probably more work to do. But going forward, I think it's not about, I think for me, losing one job is one job too many. That's what I always say. If we can find a way to manage waste in a way that is more efficient, that doesn't lead to loss of jobs, it would be better. But by and large, we are concerned about the environment. Now for the PET or the bottles, we've actually set up a working committee with the ministry to see how to manage that waste, because that's probably another frontier for waste management.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Phyllis Wakiaga, the CEO of the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, giving us some light into first of all, the announcement the president made yesterday in regards to the manufacturing sector and the power tariffs being cut at night, as well as different other issues. Thank you very much for joining us and for speaking to us. Now it's time to shift gears and cross over to sports with Sean Kadavelis. Sean.
Thank you very much, Dan. A last-minute slip-up while crossing back into Kenya from Tanzania saw rally ace Baldev Chaga surrender his lead on day 6 of the East Africa Classic Safari Rally. Chaga was among several drivers who took a wrong turn on the 25-kilometer Lunga Lunga stage, losing his lead to British driver Richard Jackson, who leads the event by 3 minutes over Chaga, with Carl Flash Tundo in third 8 minutes back. Chaga put in a protest to dispute his wrong slot, which was thrown out. Meanwhile, Onkarai retired from the competition with engine problems on the last stage of the day. The rally crews and officials wore black armbands and had stickers in the cars in memory of the late chairman of the event, J.S. Vora, who was tragically killed in a road accident on Friday. And of course, day 7 is on at the moment. On to football, Harambee Stars will be without Gor Mahia midfielder Kenneth Muguna in the forthcoming edition of the Sekafa Senior Challenge Cup, which is scheduled to kick off on Sunday. Muguna pulled out of the squad due to a thigh injury, and Thika United's side Suma called up to replace the midfielder. Muguna will be the second player to pull out of the showpiece, and that's due to an injury after teammate Harun Shakava was ruled out earlier. He's also injured. Shakava's place was taken by Zoo FC City's Isaac Kipyegon. Another player who was added to the earlier named team, was Kipyegon's teammate Nicholas Kipkurui. The team that has been in camp from Sunday will kick off their campaign against Rwanda. Meanwhile, the Kenya Football Federation, that's the Football Kenya Federation now, has confirmed the change of venues, with matches set to be played in Kisumu, shifted to Machako Stadium, citing security reasons. Moving on to England, leaders Manchester City, Chelsea, Arsenal and Liverpool, they'll all be in action tonight as the Premier League continues. City are at home to Southampton. Chelsea host Swansea. Arsenal face Huddersfield and Liverpool travel to Stoke. Last night, Tottenham was stunned by Leicester, while Manchester United beat Watford to keep up the pressure on City.
Right, a lot happening on the entertainment scene. Of course, we do start closest to home. In this case, that is Tanzania, and we are talking about Diamond Platnumz. My lord, the number of times we have featured this one on the entertainment segments. Well, this time he has a new song. Of course, that in itself is huge entertainment news. 98% of the time when Diamond releases a song, it is amazing. Well, what's really got people talking about this specific song is the fact that it's actually reflects on his personal life. He talks about his past loves and the lessons that he has learned. Of course, he mentions Wema Sepetu. He mentions another girl who may or may not have aborted his child. And we also have, of course, him talking about the big mistakes that he has made in terms of Zari. And it sort of feels like he is asking for forgiveness. Take a listen.
Wanasemaga mapenzi safari, unavyopita ndo jinsi unajongea. Ila nilapo mimbali sijui kantafika sababu.
the 1 to 1:30 segment of this show. Dan?
Thank you very much, Usha. I see you picking up the wordplay, and I'm going to usher you into a break. See you at 1 for the top of the hour news. Thank you. Good afternoon, welcome to NTV at 1. NTV Today continues. My name is Dan Mwangi. And the United States of America and the United Kingdom have sent congratulatory messages to President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto on the inauguration to serve their second terms. The UK's Minister for Africa, Roy Stewart, was in the country and attended the inauguration luncheon at State House and met with President Kenyatta and passed on a message of congratulations from UK Prime Minister Theresa May alongside an invitation to the Commonwealth Summit in London next year. The UK has called for dialogue in the country and says that with the elections now over, Kenya can move forward after a prolonged divisive election period in a new spirit of reconciliation. The US is also aware of the situation in the country and, despite congratulating the president, says it is deeply concerned about the ongoing political tensions in Kenya. In a statement from the US State Department, America has urged Kenya's security forces to refrain from the use of unnecessary force against citizens exercising their democratic rights.
Hi, how are you? How are you doing? So, well, it's pretty great to have your support and move forward to all of our largest trading partners as well. I want to see if we can actually do.
The chairman of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, EACC, Eliud Wabukala, says EACC will heed the president's call and ensure that public funds are not lost through corruption in the second term of the Jubilee rule. Wabukala, who was speaking when the commission donated money to the Kenya Red Cross, also urged Kenyans to live in peace and support each other, as this would solve most of the problems the country has.
When we are peaceful, the challenges that the Red Cross comes through will be minimized. And therefore, we appeal to everybody. As we had the message yesterday, let us follow it up and say that as a society, I wouldn't want to say that politicians, because this time almost everybody is a politician, because we talk a lot of politics. Let's talk towards supporting each other, towards healing, and towards reducing issues that divide us, towards issues that bring us together for the common good. So there's that anxiety, what we can call social angst, the Germans will call it that way, that is so high that we need to reduce it by having concern for each other. And I think to support your work at the Red Cross, let all of us then do that which is right. Do to others what you like them to do to you. And that will really be of help.
Kenya Wildlife Service Rangers on Tuesday arrested 3 suspected poachers and impounded 14 pieces of ivory weighing 58 kilograms. Chogoria Police Station, Mara OCPD Johnson Kabusia says the 3 suspects were arrested in a hotel in Chogoria town in the county of Tharaka Nithi based on information from a member of the public. The Rangers wore civilian clothes and posed as customers. They ordered food and drinks and waited for the suspects, who arrived shortly on a motorcycle carrying the luggage. The group was arrested with a trophy estimated to be worth 5.8 million shillings while waiting for a potential buyer at the restaurant.
Na wakati walifanya search, walipata pembe 14 za ndovu ambazo zilikuwa zimewekwa katika makunia, na wakashika wale washukiwa wakaja nao mpaka hapa. Wenye walikuwa wananunua hawakupatikana, lakini tunafanya uchunguzi tujue walikuwa ni akina nani.
Ukiangalia hawa wanyama wamekufa si wachache, karibu 7 hivi. So tukiangamiza wanyama kama hawa, tutaendelea kusaa ndovu moja inachukua muda, inachukua almost 2 years. So kupata ndovu karibu 7 itachukua muda. So tunawaonya wale wahalifu ambao wako kwa hii biashara, siku zenu zinahesabiwa na tutawashika. Vile pia tunawaambia wananchi hawa wanyama ni wetu, tuendelee kuzichunga.
Over 10 drivers were last night arrested by the National Transport and Safety Authority officers while driving under the influence of alcohol along the Embu-Meru highway. One driver of an overloaded lorry had a dozen beer bottles behind his seat, but despite him just missing the 0.35 limit, he was arrested for driving while endangering other motorists as there were two more unopened bottles. Upper Eastern Region NTSA manager Joseph Gishohi says that the operation will continue this festive season to reduce fatalities caused by driving while under the influence of alcohol. Some drunk drivers tried hiring sober drivers or exchanging roles with their passengers, but the trick was quickly discovered by the officers and led to the arrest of many drink drivers.
We have managed to arrest more than 10 drivers and several others have been warned. This is a normal exercise that we keep undertaking to so as we can minimize road fatalities along our area. We hope, especially this festive season, that people will honor the law and don't drink and drive.
Like they say, if you must drink and drive, drink milk and not milk stout. Now, Jubilee legislators from Murang'a County want NASA leader Raila Odinga and other opposition leaders to accept the outcome of the October 26 presidential repeat poll. The leaders castigated NASA supporters for the destruction of property during protests, asking Raila and other NASA leaders to focus on rebuilding the nation. The three MPs, Alice Wahome of Kandara, Mary Waithera of Maragua, and Peter Kimari of Mathioya, are asking President Uhuru Kenyatta to end lawlessness in the country emanating from politics, accusing National Super Alliance leaders of fueling violence across the country. That is. Now, the Jubilee leaders argue that the country cannot be held at ransom by one individual using all means to acquire power through the back door, adding that there was no time for dialogue.
As you go back, it's my request that you continue.
Ni lazima aondoke kwa kiwanja, kama anataka kurudi arudi 2022 na wale wengine watakuwa huko, tukijua ya kwamba William Ruto wa deputy president atakuwa laini ya mbele. Na saa hii mnaona wanasema hawatabui, mnakumbuka hata walitokea katikati. Kwa hivyo tunataka kuambia wao ni waoga, hata kusema hawatabui, na wameitwa na hawataki kwenda kusherekea na wananchi wale wengine wa hii nchi. Kunaonyesha wao wanajijua na wanajua shida yao ni gani.
Uhuru amewafungulia mikono kuja washikane na yeye tujenge Kenya, lakini wanakataa. Sisi tutaendelea, si ndio wananchi? Tutaendelea na watu wa Kenya mzima watashikilia serikali ya Uhuru, na mimi najua Kenya tuombee amani na itaendelea na itadumu.
The tourism sector is one of the key pillars on which the Kenyan economy sits, earning the country billions of shillings in revenue. But in the last few years, the industry has suffered major setbacks in terms of dwindling tourist numbers due to security concerns. Since 2013, terror group Al-Shabaab has carried out frequent attacks along the coastal towns of Mombasa, Malindi, Lamu and Kwale, driving away tourists and puncturing the sector in totality to a point of near collapse. Although the government assured investors and visitors of the security, more and more attacks were witnessed almost on a weekly basis, and most foreign industry players were forced to sell off their premises as tourists rerouted to Tanzania and other safer destinations. The government, through the Ministry of Tourism and Trade, then led by Cabinet Secretary Phyllis Kandie, in an effort to revitalize the sector, introduced the Kenya Tourism Board Tembea Kenya initiative that was supposed to repackage and market the tourism commodity, but along the way, it was faced with cash constraints that injured its operations. President Uhuru Kenyatta, on the other hand, also tried to waive landing fees for charter planes and also lower the park entry fees, but still, the industry fortunes remained to be bleak as more and more hotels were shut or investors relocated to neighboring Tanzania and Malawi. However, with the swearing in of Kenyatta for the second term, some tourism players are confident that the government will put more effort in the revival of the sector. Here's some views from the industry players in Malindi.
Nzuri sana kama alivyosema. Kuna wengine hapa wanaendelea kujivinjari.
Now, Kenyans are among travelers stranded in the Indonesian resort island of Bali after another day of disruption as airlines closely monitor the ash cloud from the Mount Agung volcano. Now, they say that the only alternative out of Bali is a 9-hour road trip to Jakarta since Bali's airport is closed with no indication on when it will reopen. Frustrated travelers continue to wait for communication from different airlines, with many now opting for road and water travel. Challenge Cup scheduled to kick off on Sunday. Muguna pulled out of the squad due to a thigh injury, and Thika United Said Suma called up to replace the midfielder. Muguna will be the second player to pull out of the showpiece due to an injury after teammate Harun Shakava, who was ruled out earlier, also injured. Shakava's place was taken by Zoo FC's Isaac Kipyegon. Another player who was added to the earlier named team was Kipyegon's teammate Nicholas Kipkurui. The team that has been in camp from Sunday will kick off the campaign against Rwanda. Meanwhile, Football Kenya Federation has confirmed the change of venues, with matches set to be played in Kisumu shifted to Machakos Stadium, citing security reasons. A last-stage slip-up while crossing back into Kenya from Tanzania saw rally ace Baldev Chage surrender his lead on day 6 of East African Class Safari Rally. Chage was among several drivers who took a wrong turn on the 25-kilometer Lunga Lunga stage, losing his lead to British driver Richard Jackson, who leads the event by 3 minutes over him, with Carl Flash Tundo in third, 8 minutes back. Now Chage put in a protest to dispute his wrong slot, which was thrown out. Meanwhile, Onkarai retired from the competition with engine problems on the last stage of the day. The rally crews and officials wore black armbands and had stickers in the cars in memory of the late chairman of the event, J.S. Vohra, who was tragically killed in a road accident on Friday. Leicester City stunned Tottenham as the King Power Stadium by beating them 2-1 and ensuring that Spurs have lost as many games in the Premier League this season as they did the whole of last season. Meanwhile, Manchester United beat Watford to move to within 5 points of leaders Manchester City.
So here comes
two stunning goals from Jamie Vardy and Riyad Mahrez.
some Kenyans who are stranded at the Bali airport. The airport has been reopened after the aviation industry downgraded the alert from red to orange. Earlier on, we had reported that they were going to be using a different airport, but now it has been reopened for operations continue. That's it for now. Thanks for being with me through NTV Today. My name is Dan Mwangi, but after this, you have NTV Sasa. Be sure to stay tuned.